Hey, tonight we explore the gentle world of medieval tailors, whose nimble fingers shape the fabric of society. You'll feel the soft whisper of linen and wool as they pass through calloused hands, hear the rhythmic snip of shears cutting through cloth, and breathe in the earthy scent of natural dyes that coloured the medieval palette. These were artisans whose craft was both necessity and artistry, working in shadowy workshops lit by flickering candlelight, creating garments that defined status, preserved tradition, and occasionally harboured secrets within their careful stitches. If you're enjoying this peaceful moment, please like, share, and subscribe. What memories do fabric and old clothing stir in your heart tonight? Draw the curtains closed, light a single candle if you wish, and find that perfect position of comfort. Let the gentle hum of evening wrap around you like the softest cloth as you sink deeper into your seat. Now, allow your thoughts to drift backward through the corridors of time, to an age when every thread tells a story. You wake before dawn, the rough woolen blanket scratching against your chin as you stir from dreams filled with needles and thread. The small attic room above the tailor's workshop is cold. February in Canterbury shows no mercy, even to those who craft garments for others. Your breath forms small clouds in the dim light, filtering through the uneven glass of the tiny window. The year is 1376, and today marks your 16th day as an apprentice to Master Thomas Fletcher, a tailor whose reputation extends beyond the cathedral city's walls. Sitting up on your straw mattress, you flex your fingers, still sore from yesterday's work. Each fingertip bears tiny indentations from pushing needles through resistant wool and sturdy linen. The pain is a badge of your new calling, one you've dreamed of since watching your father trade his last good cloak for medicine when your mother fell ill years ago. You slip your feet into worn leather shoes, the only pair you own, and pull your apprentice's tunic over your head. The cloth is plain but well made, a gift from Master Fletcher when you began your 7-year apprenticeship. The garment itself is a lesson, each seam perfectly executed, each stitch even and tight. Someday, you'll create such perfection yourself. The wooden stairs creak as you descend into the workshop's main room. It's still dark, but someone has already been here. A small fire flickers in the hearth, casting dancing shadows across work tables, strewn with fabric, patterns cut from parchment, and tools of the trade, shears of various sizes, bone needles, small pots of precious thread, the familiar smell of lanolin from the raw wool, mixed with the sharp tang of the dye vats in the adjoining room, fills your nostrils. There's comfort in these scents now, so different from the forest smells of your childhood home. Master Fletcher appears from the storage room, his tall frame bending slightly under the low beams. Despite his 50 years, his eyes remain sharp, missing nothing. "You're early," he says, nodding approval. His hands perpetually stained with indigo around. The nail beds are already busy sorting through a bundle of newly delivered linen. "Come, feel this. Tell me what you notice." You approach, taking the fabric between your thumb and fingers as he's taught you. The linen is finely woven, smoother than any you've handled before. "It's even," you say, searching for the right words. No slubs or thick threads, and tightly woven. The master nods, the hint of a smile behind his grey beard. "From Flanders, worth every penny. Today you'll learn to cut it." He pauses, fixing you with a serious gaze. "But first, have you practiced your stitches as instructed?" You nod eagerly, pulling a small scrap of cloth from your pocket. "Since yesterday, You've covered it with rows of tiny stitches, running stitches, back stitch, and your attempts at the more difficult hemming stitch. Master Fletcher takes it, holding it up to the growing morning light now seeping through the workshop's windows. His weathered face betrays nothing as he examines your work. Better, he finally says. Your running stitch is becoming more even. The back stitch, he points to a slightly wavering line, still needs discipline. Remember, it's your fingers guiding the needle, not your wrist. He hands the cloth back. Practice for another hour before we begin with the linen. You take up position on a low stool near the fire, grateful for its warmth. The workshop begins to come alive as two other apprentices arrive. William, who has 4 years' experience and works on basic garments independently, and Peter, the senior apprentice in his 6th year, who assists the master with the finest commissions. William nods a greeting as he passes, while Peter barely acknowledges your presence. You've learned that the hierarchy among apprentices is as strictly defined as the guild regulations themselves. As the newest, you're still proving your worth. The light strengthens outside, bringing Canterbury to life. Through the small window facing the street, you catch glimpses of the day beginning. A monk hurrying toward the magnificent cathedral whose spire dominates the city skyline. Market women with baskets of goods balanced on hips. A nobleman's servant, easily identified by his livery. Each person wears the story of their station, their garments speaking volumes about who they are and what they do. This language of cloth has become increasingly fascinating to you. Your fingers move methodically, pushing the needle through fabric, pulling thread taut, repeating the motion with growing confidence. The pleasure of creating something from nothing, of transforming a plain piece of cloth into something functional and sometimes beautiful, fills you with quiet satisfaction. Master Fletcher's wife, Mistress Agnes, enters from the adjoining family quarters, bringing the scent of freshly baked bread with her. She's a tailor in her own right, specializing in women's garments and embroidery. From her, you'll eventually learn the secrets of fitting kirtles and surcoats, though such lessons are still months away. The merchant Blackwell will come today for his final fitting, she reminds her husband, placing a small loaf and a cup of small beer at his workbench. She sets similar fare at each apprentice's place, pausing briefly to examine your stitching. Mind your tension, she murmurs before moving on. You take a moment to eat, savouring the hearty bread that's far superior to what your family could provide. Being an apprentice means sustenance as well as training, a blessing many parents pray for when placing their children in the trades. The morning progresses with you practicing increasingly complex stitches. Outside, the bell of the cathedral rings the hours. By mid-morning, Master Fletcher calls you to his table. It's time, he says, gesturing to the Flemish linen. Watch first. You observe with total concentration as he demonstrates how to prepare the fabric, washing his hands thoroughly before touching the precious material, examining it carefully for flaws, smoothing it with gentle, deliberate motions. Always respect. The cloth, he says, words you'll hear countless times in the years to come. It comes to us at great cost, both in labour and in price. He places a pattern cut from stiff parchment onto the linen, the sleeve of what will become a tunic for a wealthy merchant. Observe how I place it along the grain, he instructs. Feel this. He guides your hand along the threads. Always cut, with the weave never against it, or the garment won't hang properly. The master picks up his shears, large and heavy with handles of polished bone. These tools are among his most valuable possessions, imported, expensive, and perfectly maintained. One decisive cut, he demonstrates, the metal blades making a satisfying sound as they slice through the fabric. No hesitation, no soaring motion. That causes fraying. He cuts around the pattern with confident precision, then hands you a smaller pair of shears. Now you try with this scrap piece. Your heart beats faster as you accept the responsibility. The shears feel heavier than expected, the metal cold against your palm. You position the pattern as shown, double-checking the grain direction. Taking a deep breath, you begin to cut, trying to mimic the master's fluid motion. Your first attempt is less than perfect. The edge wavers slightly where your hand trembled. Master Fletcher examines it critically. Again, he says simply, providing another scrap. Remember, the cloth doesn't fight you. Your own tension is your enemy. Through the morning, you practice this fundamental skill while the workshop buzzes with activity around you. Peter works on a luxurious blue houppelande, the fashionable, voluminous outer garment favored by nobility, its fabric imported from Italy at tremendous expense. William measures and cuts lining for a merchant's winter cloak. Mistress Agnes sits by the window, where the light is best, embroidering delicate flowers along the neckline of a lady's kirtle. The rich tapestry of aromas, sounds, and textures surrounds you, the woody smell of the woad dye cooling in vats, the rhythmic tap-tap-tap of a wooden ruler against the cutting table as measurements are checked, the whisper of silk thread being pulled through fine linen. This sensory symphony is becoming as familiar as breathing. At midday, the cathedral bells ring longer, calling the faithful to prayers. The workshop doesn't close, but Master Fletcher pauses to bow his head briefly before continuing with his work. You follow his example, silently thanking Saint Homobonus, patron of tailors and clothworkers, for guiding your hands. The afternoon brings new challenges. Having shown sufficient improvement in cutting, you're assigned to sort a tangle of threads, separating them by color and material, carefully winding each onto wooden spools. The work is tedious but necessary. Nothing is wasted in the tailor's craft. Even the smallest scrap of thread might find use in some future garment. While your fingers work, your ears absorb the conversations around you. Discussions of coming, fashion from France, complaints about rising wool prices due to the latest taxes, gossip about which noble house is commissioning wedding garments. Through these casual exchanges, you learn the business side of your craft, who pays promptly, which suppliers provide the best materials, how to negotiate prices without offending potential patrons. The door opens, bringing a blast of cold air, and the workshop's most important client of the day, Merchant Blackwell, come for the final fitting of a garment that represents 3 weeks of work. He's a corpulent man, whose success in the wool trade is evident in his current attire and haughty demeanor. Master Fletcher greets him with appropriate deference, though you've learned the master keeps his true opinions of clients carefully masked behind professional courtesy. Your new surcoat is ready for fitting, Master Blackwell. If you'll step behind the screen, the merchant disappears behind the wooden privacy screen in the corner, emerging moments later wearing what even your novice eyes recognize as a masterpiece of tailoring. The surcoat, an overgarment that displays both wealth and taste, has been cut to cleverly minimize the merchant's girth while emphasizing his height. The deep burgundy wool, dyed at great expense, is trimmed with black velvet at the collar and cuffs. Stand here, if you please, Master Fletcher directs, turning the merchant toward the polished metal mirror, a luxury few workshops possess. How does it feel across the shoulders? You watch intently as the fitting progresses, memorizing how the master checks tension points, how he pins minute adjustments with swift, practiced movements. This is the art that goes beyond mere stitchery, understanding how fabric drapes on the human form, how to create illusions with cut and seam placement, how to flatter without the client realizing they're being cleverly manipulated by fabric, and thread. The wool is from your own latest shipment, the master mentions diplomatically, knowing that selling to the tailor who would then create his garments was a particular point of pride for the merchant. Its quality speaks well of your business acumen. Blackwell nods, pleased both by the compliment and by his reflection. The colour is good, proper for a man of my station, yet not so ostentatious as to draw the sumptuary enforcers. He refers to those who police the strict laws, dictating what materials and colours may be worn by each social class. Laws frequently bent by skilled tailors for clients wealthy enough to pay for discretion. After the merchant departs, promising to send his servant for the completed garment tomorrow, Master Fletcher turns to you. Did you observe how the shoulder seam was constructed? It's different from the common method, you nod, having noticed the unusual technique. It seemed to use a double row of stitching, with the inner row offset. The master looks pleased at your observation. Yes, a technique from Milan, stronger and more flexible, though it uses more thread. For ordinary garments it's excessive. For those who can afford it, he shrugs. This is why you must master every stitch, every cut. Different commissions require different approaches. As afternoon fades toward evening, a new visitor arrives. A young novice from the cathedral, bearing a message sealed with wax. Master Fletcher reads it, his expression brightening slightly. Good news, he announces to the workshop. We've been commissioned to repair vestments for 3 cathedral priests before Easter. Mistress Agnes, you'll need to prepare the gold thread. Thus, news causes a stir of excitement. Church commissions are prestigious and often lead to recommendations among the clergy. You realize you'll likely be kept to simple tasks while the senior apprentices assist with the delicate work. But the opportunity to observe such a project still fills you with anticipation. As daylight wanes, candles are lit throughout the workshop. Unlike some trades that must end with sundown, tailors often work into the evening, especially during busy seasons. The flickering light creates a cozy atmosphere despite the continuing work. Your eyes grow tired in the inconsistent light, but you focus on the task now assigned. Threading needles for tomorrow's work, a job requiring good eyesight and steady hands. The day's final task is one you've come to appreciate despite its simplicity. Each evening, all fabric scraps are carefully collected, sorted by type and size, and stored in labelled baskets. Larger pieces might become children's garments or accessories. Medium scraps are saved for patches and repairs. The smallest bits will be sold to paper makers who use cloth rags in their craft. Even sweep dust from the floor, containing tiny fibre fragments, is collected to sell to stuffing makers for mattresses of lower quality. In tailoring, Master Fletcher often says, waste is both sin and poor business. Tonight, as you help with this sorting, he adds another lesson. Feel this, he says, handing you 2 scraps of seemingly identical black wool. Tell me the difference. You run them between your fingers as taught, concentrating on the sensation. One feels slightly coarser, with less spring when compressed. This one is lower quality, you venture, indicating the coarser sample. The master nods. The first was dyed in the wool before spinning. The second was dyed as cloth. Always inferior, always less colour fast. But many merchants will try to sell it as the superior type. You must train your hands to know the difference, even when your eyes cannot tell. As the evening bells sound compline from the cathedral, the workday finally ends. William and Peter depart to their lodgings in the city, while you climb back to your attic room above the workshop. Your fingers ache pleasantly, your mind full of new knowledge. From your small window, you can just see the cathedral's outline against the night sky. its presence a reminder of the divine order that structures every aspect of life, including your craft. You remove your shoes and outer garments, placing them carefully on the room's sole stool. Before climbing into bed, you take out a precious possession, a small piece of fine white linen given to you by your mother when you left home. In the candlelight, you practice a few more stitches, each one a tiny bit more even than the last. Someday, when you've mastered your craft, you'll embellish this cloth with elaborate designs and give it back to her, proof of the wisdom in her, sacrifice to secure your apprenticeship. As sleep approaches, you flex your sore fingers one last time, feeling the tiny calluses beginning to form. The physical transformation that mirrors your evolving identity. No longer simply a farmer's child, you are becoming something new, a craftsperson, a keeper of ancient skills, a manipulator of material that clothes and protects humanity. Dreams come quickly, filled with colors and textures, crimson velvet, forest green wool, azure silk from distant lands you may never see except as precious fabric passing through your increasingly skilled hands. In your dreams, you create garments of impossible beauty, your fingers moving with perfect precision, each stitch a tiny miracle of creation. Dawn will bring another day of learning, another day of transformation, both of cloth and of yourself. The journey from apprentice to journeyman to master stretches before you, measured not in miles, but in stitches, in cuts, in garments completed. It is a path as old as civilization, yet uniquely yours, written with needle and thread rather than ink and parchment. The following morning arrives with a thin, golden light filtering through your window. You awaken to the sounds of the city coming alive, street vendors calling their wares, the distant tolling of church bells, the clatter of wooden clogs on cobblestone streets. Your second month as an apprentice begins today, bringing new challenges and discoveries. Descending to the workshop, you find Master Fletcher already examining a bolt of green wool that wasn't there yesterday. This arrived after you retired, he explains, gesturing for you to approach. The Archbishop's steward commissioned 6 livery garments for his household servants. Feel this wool, it's English, from the Cotswolds. You run your hand over the fabric, noting its substantial weight and tight weave. The color is a deep forest green, even throughout. It's finer than it looks, you observe, gaining confidence in your assessments. The master nods approvingly. Good. Your hands are learning what your eyes might miss. Today, I'll teach you to measure properly, no matter how fine the cloth or how skilled the stitching. A garment poorly measured will never bring credit to its maker. He retrieves his measuring cord, a length of sturdy hemp twine marked at regular intervals with colored thread. Unlike some masters who jealously guard their measurement systems, Fletcher believes in teaching thoroughly. A good tailor fears no competition from well-taught apprentices, he often says, only from ignorant ones who undervalue the craft. William arrives, followed shortly by Peter, and the day's work begins in earnest. You watch as Master Fletcher demonstrates the proper way to measure a client, using William as a model. Always measure over the garments that will be worn underneath, he instructs, and always add ease, different amounts depending on the garment's purpose and the client's preference. He shows you how to record these measurements using a system of notches on a wooden tally stick. Another skill you'll need to master, as precious parchment isn't wasted on such everyday records. Each client has their own tally, stored carefully, he explains. A good memory for faces and forms is essential, but never trust memory alone. As the morning progresses, you're introduced to more specialized tools of the trade. There's the tailor's chalk, different types for different fabrics, some made from soapstone, others from actual tailor's clay imported from the East. There are pressing sticks made of hardwood, used to flatten seams without scorching delicate fabrics. Most impressive is the set of pattern blocks, carved wooden shapes representing standard garment pieces that can be modified for individual clients. These, Master Fletcher says, handling a curved wooden form, are the true wealth of a tailor's workshop. Some have been refined through generations. They embody the accumulated knowledge of our craft. You're not permitted to handle these treasures yet, but you look on in fascination as Peter uses them to begin drafting patterns for the Archbishop's livery garments. The senior apprentice works with quiet concentration, occasionally consulting a small leather-bound book containing notes specific to recurring clients. Midday brings an unexpected visitor, a young woman whose fine garments mark her as gentry, accompanied by an older female servant. Mistress Agnes greets them and escorts them to the small chamber reserved for female clients. While tailors' wives commonly assist with women's garments, the most fashionable pieces often require a master tailor's cutting skills, creating a careful dance of propriety and practicality. You're sent to fetch fresh water from the well in the courtyard, a welcome chance to stretch your legs and breathe air, not saturated with wool fibers and dye scents. The workshop's location, a stone's throw from the cathedral in the heart of Canterbury, places it amid the continual bustle of one of England's most important cities. Pilgrims seeking the shrine of Thomas Becket mingle with merchants, craftspeople, and servants about their daily business. Returning with the water bucket, you pause to watch a dyer's apprentice hurrying past, his hands and forearms stained a brilliant blue. The colour marks him as clearly as a coat of arms marks a knight. Every craft leaves its mark on its practitioners. The tailor's pricked fingers and permanent thread calluses, the weaver's stooped shoulders, the blacksmith's muscled arms. You're beginning to recognise your fellow apprentices throughout the city by these telltale signs, acknowledging them with the subtle nods that indicate membership in the vast brotherhood of craft guilds. Back in the workshop, you're assigned to assist William with preparing the Archbishop's livery fabric. The wool must be properly sponged before cutting, dampened slightly to pre-shrink it and ensure the finished garments won't change shape with the first rain. This is careful work, requiring an even hand to avoid water spotting. Not too wet, William cautions as you apply the damp sponge, just enough to relax the fibers. Having completed 2 years more than you, he's permitted to instruct in basic techniques, though major lessons still come directly from the master. Throughout the afternoon, you absorb more knowledge, how different fabrics respond to moisture, which threads are appropriate for various applications, how to estimate yardage needed for different garment styles. Most importantly, you begin to understand the rhythms of the workshop, how each person's tasks interlock with others to create the final products. As evening approaches, Master Fletcher calls you to his workbench. Tomorrow, he says, you'll begin learning basic stitches on actual garments, not just practice scraps. He hands you a small linen pouch containing new tools, your own set of needles, graded by size and carefully stored in a fold of felted wool to prevent rusting. These are yours to maintain, he tells you solemnly. A tailor's needles are extensions of his fingers. Care for them as you would care for your own hands. The gift represents a milestone, recognition that you've demonstrated sufficient care and aptitude to be trusted with more valuable implements. You accept the pouch with appropriate gravity, already feeling the weight of responsibility it represents. That night, in your attic room, you examine each needle by candlelight, marveling at their fine points and perfectly formed eyes. You arrange them carefully in their felted bed, already anticipating tomorrow's new lessons. Sleep comes easily, your dreams now occupied not just with fabric and color, but with the promise of creation. of transforming flat cloth into garments that will warm, protect, and sometimes elevate the wearer. The weeks that follow establish patterns of their own, daily practice that gradually builds skill, periodic lessons that introduce new techniques, steady progression from simple tasks to more complex ones. You learn to sew straight seams on actual garments, beginning with undertunic for common labourers before advancing to more visible work. You discover that Master Fletcher follows a teaching method passed down through generations of tailors. First watch, then assist, then do with guidance, finally do alone, he explains. Rush no stage, or the foundation of your craft will be weak. Spring arrives, bringing longer working hours with the extended daylight. The workshop grows warmer, sometimes uncomfortably so, when all the pressing irons are heated for finishing garments. You learn to work through discomfort, to maintain precision despite heat, cold, or fatigue. The cathedral vestment project proves as prestigious as anticipated. You're permitted to watch as Master Fletcher and Peter work with silk threads and even precious gold wire to repair elaborate embroidered panels depicting saints and biblical scenes. The techniques are far beyond your current abilities, but observing their creation plants seeds of understanding that will flower in later years. Gradually, Canterbury becomes home. You learn its streets and shortcuts, develop favourite spots to sit during rare free hours on Sundays, forge cautious friendships with apprentices from allied trades. The homesickness that initially kept you awake at night fades, replaced by growing pride in your developing identity as a craftsperson. 1. Monday morning in late April, Master Fletcher makes an announcement. The spring fair begins tomorrow. We'll have a stall for 3 days. He looks at you. You'll assist. It's time you learned the public face of our craft. The fair is your first exposure to the commercial side of tailoring. The workshop prepares ready-made items for sale, caps, simple tunics, children's garments, while also displaying finer samples to attract commission work. Your job is to assist with arranging the stall each morning, help customers find appropriate items, and observe how Master Fletcher discusses custom work with potential clients. The experience opens your eyes to aspects of the craft you hadn't considered. You watch how the master adjusts his language and manner for different customers. Respectful but confident with nobility, genial with merchants, straightforward with commoners. You learn which garments draw attention but rarely sell, elaborately. Embroidered demonstration pieces, verses which generate actual income. Practical, well-made, everyday wear. Most revealing is observing how Master Fletcher negotiates prices. There's an art to naming a figure that values your work appropriately while remaining attainable for the client. Never apologize for quality, he tells you, after concluding a particularly delicate negotiation. If they want cheaper, they can find a lesser tailor. Our guild reputation depends on maintaining standards. By the fair's end, you've gained new appreciation for the business acumen required alongside technical skill. A master tailor must be not just craftsperson, but merchant, diplomat, and judge of character, assessing who will pay promptly, who needs flattery, who appreciates honest advice about appropriate styles for their station. As spring turns to summer, your skills advance steadily. You're now trusted to complete simple garments from start to finish, though each is carefully inspected before being delivered to clients. Your stitches grow more even, your cutting more confident. The mysterious marks on pattern pieces begin to make sense as you learn the language of tailoring. Notches indicating where pieces join, symbols showing where to gather or pleat, lines representing grain direction. Master Fletcher proves to be a demanding but fair teacher. When you struggle with a technique, such as setting in sleeves, a perpetually challenging task, he demonstrates repeatedly adjusting his instruction to match your learning style. Some see with their eyes, some understand through words, some must feel with their hands, he explains, after finding that physical guidance helps you grasp a difficult collar construction. A good master recognizes how each apprentice learns best. One sweltering July afternoon, you're working near the open window when raised voices from the street catch your attention. A wealthy merchant is arguing with a journeyman tailor from another workshop, a dispute over a completed garment that apparently doesn't meet expectations. Master Fletcher pauses his work to listen, then softly comments, "Observe, all of you. This is what happens when a craftsman promises what he cannot deliver, or when a client expects more than he has paid for." He watches as the argument escalates. Our reputation travels before and after us. Guard it jealously. The incident becomes an impromptu lesson in professional ethics. That evening, the master spends time explaining aspects of guild regulations designed to protect both crafters and clients. Quality standards that must be maintained, fair pricing practices, procedures for resolving disputes. You begin to understand that the Guild of Tailors is more than a trade association. It's a brotherhood with traditions and responsibilities stretching back centuries. By autumn, your transformation is well underway. Your hands have developed tailor's calluses, the distinctive thickening on the middle finger where the needle rests, the slight indentation on your thumb from thousands of thread pulls. You can identify a dozen fabric types by touch alone. You understand the seasonal rhythms of the trade, the rush for new garments before major feasts, the slower winter months when focus shifts to heavier clothing and repairs, the careful planning required to ensure materials are ordered well before they're needed. Your first year of apprenticeship concludes with a small but significant ceremony. Master Fletcher presents you with a pair of modest shears, not as fine as his, but of good quality and newly sharpened. "You've proven your commitment," he says, as the workshop looks on. "These are tools of responsibility, not just convenience. Use them with the respect they deserve." That night, you clean and oil your new shears before carefully placing them in the wooden box you've carved to hold your growing collection of tools. They represent both achievement and promise, tangible proof of skills already gained, and a symbol of the mastery still to come during the remaining years of your apprenticeship. As you drift towards sleep, you reflect on how much has changed in 12 short months. The bewildered country youth has begun the metamorphosis into a skilled artisan. Canterbury has become familiar territory. The language of fabric and form now makes sense to both your mind and your hands. More importantly, you've begun to understand something not taught directly, but absorbed through daily immersion, the deeper meaning of the tailor's craft. Beyond mere clothing production lies a profound art of transformation, turning humble materials into objects of utility, beauty, and sometimes even power. Through this craft, you've connected to an ancient lineage of makers whose hands have clothed humanity since the first garments were stitched from animal skins. Tomorrow will bring new lessons, new challenges, new opportunities to transform not just fabric, but yourself. 6 more years of apprenticeship stretch ahead, years that will test your patience and determination, but ultimately forge you into a full member of this venerable guild. For now, though, there is satisfaction in small victories, a perfectly executed seam, a client's nod of approval, the growing confidence in your hands as they perform tasks that once seemed impossibly complex. Your fingers trace the outline of your shears through the wooden box beside your bed. These are no longer just tools of a trade you've chosen. They're extensions of who you are becoming. With each careful cut, each measured stitch, You're not simply crafting garments. You're fashioning your future, one thread at a time. And now, this story draws to a close. Take a deep breath as we gently move forward in time, into the next chapter of your journey. Breathe deeply as the tapestry of time shifts beneath your fingertips. The thread of your consciousness now weaves through the streets of medieval Paris, where the stones themselves hold stories, and the needle's path may conceal more than simple decoration. The cathedral rises above you, watching as you step into a world where some patterns speak in whispers that only the initiated can hear. You adjust the strap of your journeyman's pack as you cross the Petit Pont into the Ile de la Cité, the heart of Paris. The weight against your shoulder, tools, samples of your work, letters of recommendation, represents everything you've achieved during 7 years of apprenticeship in Lyon. The morning mist rising from the Seine softens the outline of Notre Dame Cathedral ahead, its recently completed towers reaching toward heaven like stone prayers. The year is 1248, and you have come to Paris to further your craft as a journeyman tailor. The cobblestones beneath your feet are still slick with morning dew, forcing you to step carefully. All around, the city awakens, bread sellers calling, their wares, novice monks hurrying to prayers, craftspeople opening shutters to workshops similar to those found in every European city, yet distinct in the Parisian manner. The air carries the familiar urban mixture of smoke, humanity, animals and waterways, overlaid with something uniquely Parisian. Perhaps a certain quality of light, or maybe the scent of particular spices favored by local cooks. Your letter of introduction directs you to the workshop of Master Etienne Mercier, whose reputation for fine tailoring reaches far beyond Paris. As a properly trained journeyman, you're entitled to seek work in any guild-recognized workshop, part of the tradition that ensures techniques spread throughout Christendom, while maintaining the exclusive knowledge that protects the guild's value. Following directions received from a helpful baker, you turn down a narrow street near the cathedral's south side. The buildings lean toward each other overhead, creating a perpetual twilight even as morning strengthens elsewhere. Signs identifying various businesses hang at eye level. A glover, an illuminator of manuscripts, a seller of pilgrim badges, and finally, the sign you seek. A pair of golden shears against a blue background, the mark of Master Mercier's establishment. Taking a moment to straighten your best tunic and brush road dust from your leggings, you prepare to make a favorable first impression. A journeyman's appearance speaks volumes about his work. Neat. Stitching on personal garments suggests the same care will extend to clients' commissions. You run your fingers once through your hair, adjust the small pouch containing your finest needles hanging from your belt, and knock firmly on the workshop door. A young apprentice, perhaps 12 years old, opens the door. His eyes widen slightly at your travel-worn appearance before he remembers his manners. "How may Master Mercier's workshop be of service?" he asks with the careful formality of someone recently instructed in proper business greetings. You explain your purpose and present, your letter of introduction. The boy nods and disappears into the workshop's interior, leaving you standing in a small antechamber where samples of the master's work are displayed on wooden forms. A nobleman's party-coloured houppelande in vibrant blues and reds, a merchant's more subdued but finely detailed cotte, embroidered liturgical vestments that showcase exceptional skill with decorative stitching. Your fingers itch to examine these pieces more closely, to learn their secrets of construction, but you remain respectfully still. Each workshop guards its particular techniques, sharing them only with those who have earned the privilege through formal association. Footsteps announce the return of the apprentice, accompanied by a tall man in his middle years. Master Mercier has the stooped right shoulder common to many tailors, the result of decades bending over work, but carries himself with dignity. His hands, immediately noticeable to your trained eye, show the permanent indentations and subtle calluses of your shared profession. "So Lion sends us another journeyman," he says, his tone neither welcoming nor dismissive as he breaks the seal on your letter. His eyes move quickly over the text, occasionally glancing up to assess whether your appearance matches the recommendation. Your master speaks well of your cutting skills, particularly for curved seams. He mentions you have a good eye for balance in garment proportions. You acknowledge this assessment with appropriate modesty, waiting as the master continues his evaluation. After a moment, he nods slightly. "We have sufficient work at present. The court's presence in Paris has brought many commissions. You may stay for a season, perhaps longer, if your work proves as good as this letter suggests." Relief washes through you. Finding placement quickly means you won't deplete your modest travel funds seeking another position. Master Mercier instructs. The apprentice, Guillaume, you learn, to show you to the journeymen's quarters above the workshop and explain the household routines. Following the boy up a narrow staircase, you enter a long room under the eaves where 4 pallet beds indicate the workshop employs several journeymen. Guillaume points to the empty bed that will be yours. "The others are working now," he explains. "Jean and Marcel have been here 3 years. Thomas arrived last autumn from Bruges." The implied hierarchy is clear. As the newest arrival, you'll be last in seniority among the journeymen, though still above the apprentices. After placing your belongings on your assigned bed, you return downstairs, eager to begin work immediately. The workshop's main room bustles with activity. 2 journeymen cutting patterns at a large table by the window where light is best. An apprentice older than Guillaume carefully pressing finished seams with a heated iron. Master Mercier himself, examining a partially completed garment on a wooden form. As a journeyman, you occupy the middle tier of the workshop hierarchy. No longer required to perform the most menial tasks reserved for apprentices, you're still subordinate to both the master and his senior journeyman. Your position grants you the right to observe techniques more closely and to undertake significant portions of important commissions, opportunities essential for developing the skills required to eventually become a master yourself. Master Mercier gestures you toward a workbench where fabric has already been laid out. Fine black wool for what appears to be a scholar's robe. "Show me your stitching," he instructs. "Complete this seam following the pins." This is both test and introduction, a chance to demonstrate your skill level while becoming familiar with the workshop's standards. You select thread from a nearby basket, thread your own needle, noting that the master watches even this basic action, and begin the seam with the careful, even stitches that became second nature during your apprenticeship. As you work, you become aware of the workshop's particular atmosphere. Unlike your previous master's establishment, where conversation flowed freely, Master Mercier's journeymen work in near silence, communicating primarily through gestures and brief phrases related directly to the task at hand. The tension is not unfriendly but focused, as though each person exists in a bubble of intense concentration. By day's end, you've completed several basic tasks assigned to assess your capabilities. Your back aches from maintaining proper posture at an unfamiliar workbench, and your eyes strain from adjusting to the workshop's lighting, which differs subtly from what you're accustomed to. Yet there's satisfaction in having secured a position and begun establishing your place in this new environment. The evening meal, shared at a long table behind the workshop, provides your first opportunity to properly meet your fellow journeyman. Thomas from Bruges proves the most welcoming, perhaps because his own arrival is recent enough that he remembers the awkwardness of being the newcomer. Jean and Marcel, Parisians who completed their apprenticeships under Master Mercier, are politely reserved, answering questions but volunteering little. You'll find Paris different from Lyon, Thomas tells you between mouthfuls of bread and stew. The guild here is older, the traditions more rigid, but the opportunity to work on commissions for the court makes it worthwhile. Does the workshop often receive royal commissions? You ask, trying to gauge the establishment's standing. Jean finally enters the conversation. Not from the king himself, those go to his personal tailor, but we create garments for lesser nobles, visiting dignitaries, wealthy merchants seeking to emulate court fashion. His tone carries pride, tinged with ambition. Master Mercier's embroidery work is particularly sought after. You've much to learn if you hope to assist with such pieces. You accept this assessment without offense. It's simply the reality of entering a new workshop. Each master's techniques differ slightly, and regional styles vary despite the guild's standardized training. Your lion-trained hands will indeed need time to adapt to Parisian expectations. The following weeks establish your new routine. You wake before dawn to maximize natural light for working, break briefly for simple meals, and continue until evening shadows make fine stitching impossible. Gradually, you earn small measures of trust, more complex assignments, less scrutiny of completed work, inclusion in technical discussions among the journeymen. It's during your third week that you first notice something unusual. A nobleman arrives for a fitting of an elaborate court garment being created by Master Mercier personally, with assistance from Marcel, the senior journeyman. While the master pins adjustments, you're assigned to prepare threads for the next stage of construction, positioning you within earshot of their conversation. The pattern along the sleeve seam, it will be as discussed, the nobleman asks quietly, glancing toward the door as though concerned about being overheard. Of course, my lord, Master Mercier responds, his voice equally low, visible only to those who understand its significance. The exchange seems oddly secretive for a discussion of mere decorative elements. When the nobleman departs, you observe Marcel and the master huddled over a parchment, showing an embroidery design unlike any you've seen. Not the typical floral or geometric patterns, but something more angular, almost runic in appearance. Your curiosity piqued, you pay closer attention in subsequent days, noticing that certain clients receive this same hush treatment. Their commissions are worked on primarily when the workshop is least busy, and the completed embroidery patterns, while beautiful, contain elements that seem to serve no purely decorative purpose. Asymmetrical details, repeated motifs in seemingly random locations, color combinations that draw the eye in unusual ways. Thomas catches you studying one such garment as it awaits delivery. Beautiful work, isn't it? He comments casually, though something in his expression suggests caution. The pattern is unusual, you reply carefully. I've not seen its like in Lyon. He hesitates, then speaks softly. Some patterns are unique to certain workshops. Best to admire without questioning too deeply. His warning only intensifies your curiosity, but you heed it for the moment, focusing instead on establishing your reputation through excellent craftsmanship. The weeks turn to months, and Paris gradually becomes familiar. Its rhythms, its landmarks, its seasonal cycles. You discover favorite spots along the Seine for Sunday reflection, locate suppliers of the finest needles, form cautious friendships with journeymen from allied trades. Autumn arrives, bringing shorter working days and an increased pace as clients commission warmer garments for the approaching winter. The workshop takes on an additional apprentice, shifting you up slightly in the hierarchy. Master Mercier begins trusting you with more significant aspects of important commissions, including cutting primary pieces for governmental officials, formal attire. It's during this busy season that you're finally granted access to the workshop's pattern room, a small chamber adjacent to the master's private quarters, where the wooden pattern blocks, embroidery designs, and client measurement records are stored. This access represents significant trust. These materials embody the workshop's most valuable intellectual property. One evening, when you're sent to retrieve a specific sleeve pattern, you notice a small chest partially hidden behind larger storage boxes. Something about its positioning, deliberately obscured yet accessible, triggers your professional curiosity. Glancing over your shoulder to ensure privacy, you examine it briefly. The chest is locked, but its craftsmanship and the care taken to both conceal and protect it suggest contents of particular value. You mention nothing of your discovery, but it lingers in your thoughts. Over the following weeks, you observe more instances of the unusual embroidery patterns being applied to garments for specific clients, never the most prominent nobles, but educated men of moderate influence, scholars from the university, certain clerics, merchants who trade in exotic goods. The mystery deepens when, assisting Master Mercier with a university scholar's robe, you notice him incorporating one of these strange patterns along the edge of a sleeve, a place normally hidden. When the wearer's arms are lowered, but visible when raised in scholarly debate. The stitch arrangement seems unusual. You comment carefully, testing boundaries. The master glances at you sharply. "It's a decorative flourish particular to our workshop," he replies, his tone discouraging further inquiry. That evening, Thomas seeks you out as you're preparing for sleep. "Be careful," he murmurs, seating himself on his own pallet across from yours. "Some curiosities are better left unexplored." When you press for explanation, he sighs and continues in a near whisper. "There are patterns that mean more than simple decoration, signs recognizable to those who share certain ideas." He hesitates. "Ideas the church might consider questionable." Understanding dawns slowly. You've heard rumors of secret knowledge circulating among scholars and certain artisans. Ancient texts preserved despite official disapproval. Philosophical concepts that push against theological boundaries. Scientific observations that challenge established beliefs. The notion that such dangerous ideas might be communicated through something as innocent as embroidery patterns is both ingenious and terrifying. "Is the master?" You begin, unsure how to phrase such a dangerous question. Master Mercier provides a service, Thomas interrupts. He judges no one's beliefs but protects his client's privacy absolutely. That discretion extends to his journeyman as well. The implicit warning is clear. Knowledge without absolute discretion could endanger everyone in the workshop. Sleep comes slowly that night, your mind filled with implications. The tailoring craft has always involved secrets, closely guarded, cutting techniques, special stitches, methods for creating optical illusions that flatter the wearer. But this is different, using the craft to hide messages in plain sight, creating garments that identify the wearer to others who share forbidden knowledge while remaining invisible to uninitiated observers. The following day unfolds normally despite your new awareness. You complete assigned tasks with your usual care, interact appropriately with clients, maintain professional relations with fellow journeymen. Yet inwardly, you're seeing the workshop with fresh eyes, noticing which patterns are recorded in the common design books and which are apparently committed only to memory, observing which clients receive particular attention from the master himself. Winter settles over Paris, bringing early darkness and bitter cold. Work shifts toward indoor, rather than public activities as snowstorms regularly blank the city in white. During these shortened days, Master Mercier begins a new practice, instructing you personally in advanced embroidery techniques after the apprentices have retired for the evening. These lessons, ostensibly to improve your decorative skills, focus particularly on creating dimensionality through layered stitching and incorporating subtle color variations that change appearance depending on viewing angle. A garment should reveal different aspects of itself depending on circumstance, the master explains one evening, demonstrating a technique that makes a pattern appear to change when viewed from different positions. Just as a person shows different faces to different observers, you recognize these lessons for what they are, a test of both your skill and your discretion. Master Mercier is evaluating whether you can be trusted with greater knowledge of the workshop's true specialties. Each evening, he teaches techniques slightly more advanced, slightly more unusual, watching carefully for your reaction. As winter deepens, you become aware of another pattern. Certain clients visit only on particular days, often arriving after regular business hours. These men, for they are exclusively male, are received by the master in his private quarters, rather than the main workshop. Though you never witness these meetings directly, you notice that afterward, Master Mercier often works late into the night on special commissions, sometimes consulting materials from the locked chest you discovered earlier. Your opportunity to learn more comes unexpectedly. A heavy snowstorm descends on Paris one February afternoon, forcing clients to cancel appointments and making travel through city streets treacherous. Master Mercier dismisses the apprentices early and instructs the journeymen to complete only essential tasks before seeking their own quarters. As you're securing thread stores against the workshop's persistent mice, Marcel approaches. "The master requests your assistance this evening," he says quietly, after the others retire. Heart quickening, you complete your tasks and retreat to the journeyman's quarters with the others. Thomas gives you a questioning look as you remain, fully dressed while he prepares for sleep. "Master's instructions," you murmur, offering no further explanation. When the breathing of your companions deepens into sleep, you descend the narrow stairs. The workshop lies in darkness save for light, seeping from beneath the door to the master's private workroom. You knock softly and are bidden to enter. Master Mercier sits at a small table illuminated by multiple candles, an extravagance that indicates the importance of the work at hand. Before him lies a nearly completed scholar's robe of fine black wool, its wide sleeves and collar already embellished with subtle embroidery in midnight blue thread, barely distinguishable from the base fabric. "Close the door," he instructs without looking up. When you comply, he finally raises his eyes to yours. "You've shown both skill and discretion these past months. It's time you learned another aspect of our craft." He gestures for you to be seated across from him. "What I share now must never be discussed outside this room. The knowledge itself is not forbidden, but its applications could be misinterpreted by authorities." You nod understanding, though your throat feels suddenly dry. "Since ancient times," the master begins, "those who think beyond accepted boundaries have sought ways to recognize one another safely. Symbols, phrases, objects that appear innocent to outsiders, but carry meaning to initiates." His fingers trace an embroidered pattern along the robe's collar, a series of interconnected triangles that might be dismissed as mere geometric decoration. The tailor's art is perfectly suited to such communication. We create garments seen by all yet truly noticed by few. We can incorporate messages in plain sight, hiding them not through concealment, but through observers' expectations of what they're seeing. He lifts a worn leather book from beside him, clearly retrieved from the mysterious chest, and opens it carefully. Inside are diagrams unlike any in the Guild's standard pattern books. Geometric figures annotated with symbols resembling astronomical notations, detailed drawings of embroidery patterns with specific thread counts and stitch directions indicated. This knowledge comes from many sources: ancient Greek texts preserved by Arab scholars, observations of natural phenomena recorded by men who studied the heavens before Christianity reached these lands, mathematical principles rediscovered in our time but known to earlier civilizations. All knowledge that exists in the uncomfortable margins, neither strictly forbidden nor freely permitted. His explanation continues, revealing how certain embroidery patterns encode mathematical concepts considered too abstract for practical application by church authorities, how color combinations reference astronomical observations that challenge prevailing celestial models, how stitch directions can encode letters from ancient alphabets that preserve concepts lacking Latin equivalents. Our clients include men who seek truth through observation rather than solely through revelation, Master Mercier explains. Scholars who believe knowledge from all sources has value. They require ways to identify fellow seekers without attracting unwanted attention. The sophistication of this hidden communication system astounds you. What appeared to be merely decorative elements now reveal themselves as a complex language accessible only to those with the proper education to recognize and interpret them. The master shows how a seemingly conventional pattern along a sleeve edge actually represents a mathematical formula describing planetary motion, how an embroidered collar contains phrases from forbidden texts rendered into a visual code. Why reveal this to me, you ask finally? Because true mastery of any craft includes understanding its fullest applications, he replies. And because I need another pair of skilled hands for such work. These commissions pay handsomely, but require absolute precision and complete discretion. He studies your face carefully. You needn't decide immediately whether to participate. Consider carefully. There's no shame in preferring to limit your work to conventional garments. That night, sleep eludes you entirely. The knowledge shared feels simultaneously thrilling and dangerous. You've always viewed your craft as practical artistry, creating functional objects of beauty that serve straightforward purposes. This hidden aspect transforms familiar work into something with potentially far-reaching consequences. Dawn finds you tired but resolved. When Master Mercier calls you to his workroom before regular hours, you accept his offer to participate in these special commissions. Your decision stems not from political or philosophical alignment with the client's hidden communications. Their actual beliefs remain largely unknown to you, but from commitment to the fullest expression of your craft. Thus begins your education in what might be called the shadow language of tailoring. In addition to your regular duties, you spend evenings learning to incorporate specific patterns that convey meaning beyond decoration. You memorize proportional relationships that must be precisely maintained, stitch combinations that reference particular concepts, methods for making certain elements visible only in specific lighting conditions. This specialized knowledge changes how you view all garments, even those without hidden messages. You begin to recognize that every decorative choice, every color combination, proportion relationship, and placement decision communicates something about both maker and wearer, whether intentionally or not. Clothing has always been language. You're simply becoming fluent in its more esoteric dialects. Spring arrives, bringing longer working days and increased activity throughout Paris. The workshop receives more conventional commissions as nobles prepare new garments for Easter celebrations and the anticipated return of King Louis IX from his crusade. These normal activities provide perfect cover for the continued production of the special commissions that now occasionally pass through your hands. Your involvement remains limited to specific technical aspects, executing patterns designed by the master rather than creating the encoded messages themselves. This arrangement protects both you and the workshop. You can truthfully claim ignorance of any meaning beyond aesthetic choices if ever questioned. One rain-soaked April evening, as you're completing work on a university scholar's ceremonial hood, containing subtle astronomical references in its embroidery, an unexpected visitor arrives. Despite the late hour and inclement weather, Master Mercier immediately clears the workshop, dismissing journeymen and apprentices to their quarters, while he receives the visitor privately. From your position on the stairs, you glimpse a man in modest clerical garb, not the rich vestments of high church officials, but the practical attire of a working scholar priest. Something about the visitor's furtive manner and the master's unusually deferential greeting suggests this is no ordinary client. The following morning, Master Mercier appears unusually preoccupied. He assigns you standard tasks before disappearing into his private workroom for several hours. When he emerges, he summons you alone. An opportunity has arisen, he says without preamble once the door closes behind you. One that could significantly advance your understanding, but not without risk. He explains that the previous evening's visitor was Brother Nicholas, a Dominican affiliated with the university, but also connected to circles studying ancient knowledge from Arabic sources. He leads a group of scholars who meet secretly to discuss texts and ideas that explore the natural world through observation rather than solely through established doctrine. What has this to do with our craft, you ask, though you suspect the answer. These men require identifiers, subtle elements in their garments that allow them to recognize fellow seekers when traveling to other universities. We've provided this service for years. He pauses, studying your reaction. Brother Nicholas has requested that someone from our workshop attend one of their discussions to better understand the concepts they wish to represent through our work. The implication is clear. Master Mercier is offering you this dangerous opportunity. Attending such a gathering could be considered heretical by strict church authorities, yet the knowledge gained could prove invaluable for your craft. More importantly, it represents the Master's ultimate vote of confidence in your discretion. When would this meeting occur, you ask, neither accepting nor declining outright? Tomorrow evening. You would go disguised as a scribe's assistant, accompanying Brother Nicholas. None would know your true occupation, except the brother himself. You request time to consider, which the Master grants with a nod of approval. Hasty decisions, in such matters, demonstrate poor judgment. Throughout the day, you weigh the opportunity against its dangers. Curiosity and professional pride pull you toward acceptance, while caution and self-preservation argue for refusal. By evening, curiosity prevails. You inform Master Mercier of your decision, and he provides detailed instructions for the following night. Where to meet Brother Nicholas, appropriate behavior in scholarly company, and most importantly, what information to specifically observe for application in your craft. The next evening finds you walking through unfamiliar streets in borrowed clothing, the simple but respectable garb of a scribe's assistant, complete with ink stains carefully applied to your fingertips. Brother Nicola meets you at an agreed location near the university, his manner businesslike but not unfriendly. Master Mercier vouches for your discretion, he says as you walk together through darkening streets. Remember, you are here to observe and learn, not to participate in discussions. He leads you to a modest home near the university quarter, where you're admitted through a side entrance after a coded knock. Inside, you find a scene far less dramatic than your imagination had conjured. No mysterious rituals or strange apparatus, simply a group of serious-looking men seated around tables covered with manuscripts, diagrams, and natural specimens. Brother Nicholas introduces you simply as an artisan who assists our work, and the scholars pay you little attention after brief acknowledgements. You're directed to a seat along the wall, from which you observe the proceedings with keen interest. The discussion centers on recent astronomical observations that suggest refinements to existing models of planetary motion. The scholars refer to texts in several languages, including Arabic translations of ancient Greek works and more recent observations from Iberian astronomers. They debate methodologies, compare calculations, and occasionally express frustration with the limitations imposed on their inquiries by theological constraints. What strikes you most is the normalcy of these supposedly dangerous activities. These men seek understanding of the natural world through observation and calculation, approaches that complement rather than contradict your own craft's empirical foundations. Tailoring, too, relies on precise measurement, careful observation of how materials behave, and application of geometric principles to three-dimensional forms. As the evening progresses, one scholar unrolls a large diagram showing circular and elliptical patterns representing celestial movements. Something about these overlapping curves captures your professional attention. They echo the flowing lines of well-designed garment patterns, where each curve must work in harmony with others to create a coherent whole. When Brother Nicholas notices your interest, he briefly explains the diagram, using terminology unfamiliar, yet somehow resonant with your understanding of shape and form. You begin to see why Master Mercier values this connection. There are principles here that, while developed for entirely different purposes, could inform innovations in garment construction. The meeting concludes well after midnight. The scholars, dispersing individually to avoid drawing attention, Brother Nicholas escorts you through back streets to a point where you can safely return to the workshop district. Did you find what you needed? He asks before departing. I believe so. You reply, mind still processing connections between what you've witnessed and your daily work. There are patterns there that speak to principles we use, though in different language. He nods, seemingly satisfied. This is why we value artisans like Master Mercier, and now you. You translate abstract knowledge into forms that can be carried safely through the world. With that cryptic statement, he disappears into the darkness, leaving you to make your way back to familiar territory. The night's experience settles into your understanding gradually during the walk home. These scholars aren't practicing dark arts or challenging fundamental faith, but simply pursuing knowledge through observation and reason, methods increasingly viewed with suspicion by authorities concerned with maintaining established order. The following morning, you report to Master Mercier, describing what you observed while carefully avoiding specific details of the scholar's work. Discretion protects all parties. He listens attentively, occasionally asking clarifying questions about patterns or proportions mentioned. You begin to understand now, he says when you finish. Our craft has always been more than merely clothing bodies. At its highest levels, tailoring clothes ideas as well, giving form to concepts, making abstract principles tangible through proportion and pattern. Over subsequent weeks, your work takes on new dimensions. You assist more frequently with the special commissions, your understanding of their encoded elements, now informed by first-hand knowledge of the concepts they represent. The abstract patterns gain meaning. This arrangement of stitches references specific astronomical relationships. That color transition represents philosophical concepts about the nature of change. These proportional relationships embed mathematical principles considered too abstract for practical application. Your conventional work improves as well. Understanding the mathematical principles behind certain forms allows you to create garments with more harmonious proportions. Techniques developed for hiding encoded patterns prove useful for purely aesthetic purposes too, creating visual effects that enhance the wearer's appearance through optical illusions based on principles similar to those the scholars discuss. Summer brings increased activity throughout Paris as the city prepares for important diplomatic visits. The workshop receives commissions for formal garments from minor nobles and wealthy merchants hoping to impress foreign dignitaries. These conventional projects provide perfect cover for the continued production of encoded garments, which pass unremarked among the numerous commissioned pieces. Your role continues to expand as Master Mercier increasingly trusts you with significant aspects of these special projects. You never meet clients directly. That privilege remains the master's, alone, but your hands now create major elements of the encoded garments, rather than merely executing prescribed patterns. One particularly warm August evening, as you're completing work on a scholar's ceremonial robe embedded with subtle references to Arabic astronomical texts, Master Mercier joins you in the otherwise empty workshop. He observes your work silently for several minutes before speaking. Your journey will take you away from Paris soon, he states simply. You look up, startled. While journeymen traditionally travel between cities to broaden their experience, you've established a comfortable position here and haven't considered departure. Reading your expression, he continues, not through any dissatisfaction with your work. Quite the contrary. There are workshops in Florence where these skills would be highly valued. He gestures to the coded embroidery taking shape beneath your fingers. Knowledge flows more freely. There, under the protection of powerful patrons who value learning from all sources. You understand the unspoken message. He's offering to connect you with a network that extends beyond Paris. Workshops that serve similar scholarly communities in other centers of learning. This represents not just professional advancement, but initiation into a hidden brotherhood of artisans who preserve and transmit knowledge through their crafts. When, you ask, mind already calculating the implications of such a journey? After Michaelmas, I'll provide letters of introduction that will speak to both your conventional skills and your specialized knowledge. His expression grows more serious. The journey itself carries risks. You'll travel with merchant guards for safety from ordinary dangers, but the real peril comes from carrying certain knowledge across territories where church authorities take strict views of intellectual exploration. The master retrieves a small object from his pocket. A thimble that appears ordinary except for tiny markings around its circumference. This identifies you to allies along the route. Show it only when necessary, and only to those who first demonstrate knowledge of our signs. The remaining weeks in Paris take on a bittersweet quality as you prepare for departure. Your hands continue their daily work, cutting, stitching, fitting, while your mind contemplates the journey ahead. You've grown attached to this city, with its magnificent cathedral, lively university quarter, and familiar workshop routines. Yet the opportunity to expand your craft and knowledge in Florence, where new artistic and intellectual currents flow, pulls you forward. Master Mercier intensifies your training, sharing techniques he'd previously reserved. Methods for creating embroidered text, so subtle, it appears merely decorative unless viewed with specific knowledge. Ways of encoding information in the very structure of a garment through proportional relationships. Approaches to creating patterns that reveal different aspects when viewed from different angles or in different lights. These are not just tailoring techniques, he explains one evening as you work together on a particularly complex encoded pattern. They are principles of information, how to preserve it, how to transmit it, how to hide it in plain sight. Throughout history, when knowledge has been threatened, artisans have become its guardians, embedding wisdom in objects that pass unremarked because they serve everyday purposes. As your departure date approaches, you find yourself observing Paris with new awareness, noting how knowledge and ideas flow through the city's spaces, from the formal disputations at the university to the practical innovations in craft workshops, to the market gossip that transmits information across social boundaries. The garments you've helped create with their hidden meanings are just one current in this vast river of human communication. Your final evening in the workshop arrives too. Quickly, after the apprentices have been dismissed and other journeymen have retired, Master Mercier presents you with parting gifts: a set of fine steel needles, a small book of pattern diagrams that appear conventional but contain subtle encodings, and most surprisingly, a length of exquisite Florentine silk in deep crimson. For your masterwork, when the time comes, he explains, running his fingers appreciatively over the lustrous fabric. A garment that demonstrates both your technical skill and your understanding of our craft's deeper purposes. You accept these treasures with appropriate gravity, knowing their value extends beyond monetary worth. They represent not just tools and materials, but connection to an ancient lineage of craftspeople who've used their skills to preserve and transmit knowledge through times when open expression proved dangerous. Remember, Master Mercier says as your meeting concludes, a tailor's true skill lies not in making garments that draw attention, but in creating significance that remains invisible to all except those with eyes trained to see it. In Florence, you'll find others who understand this principle, not just in our craft, but in painting, architecture, and other arts. Dawn finds you already walking toward the city gates, your journeyman's pack slightly heavier with your new possessions, your mind filled with techniques and patterns mastered in Paris. The road to Florence stretches ahead, months of travel, through changing landscapes, workshops where you'll exchange labor for temporary lodging, potential dangers both mundane and extraordinary. As the rising sun illuminates Notre Dame's towers behind you, you consider how your understanding of tailoring has transformed during your time in Paris. What began as a practical craft concerned with clothing, human bodies has revealed itself as something far more. A language capable of preserving and transmitting ideas through turbulent times, a means of connecting minds across distances, a way of hiding truth in plain sight when necessary. Your fingers touch the secret thimble hidden in your belt pouch, a small object that identifies you as part of this hidden network of knowledge keepers. With each stitch you'll make along your journey south, with each garment that forms beneath your increasingly skilled hands, you'll not just be practicing a trade, but participating in the ancient human endeavor to preserve wisdom against the ravages of time, politics, and dogma. The city falls behind as you join other travelers on the road south. Your external appearance, a journeyman tailor seeking to broaden his skills through travel, reveals nothing of your initiation into the hidden dimensions of your craft. This duality itself embodies the principle you've learned. The most powerful communications often hide in plain sight. visible to all, yet truly seen only by those who possess the knowledge to recognize their significance. Ahead lies Florence, with its emerging artistic brilliance and intellectual ferment. There, you'll continue this journey of discovery, adding new dimensions to your understanding of how fabric and thread can speak volumes to those who know how to read them. Your hands will create garments that clothe bodies while your mind explores how patterns can preserve ideas, twin aspects of a craft that bridges the practical and profound, the visible and hidden, the material and intellectual dimensions of human experience. This part of your dream has ended, but your journey through history continues. Let your consciousness drift forward through centuries, the golden thread of time unwinding across generations of nimble fingers and knowing eyes. Now you enter the opulent, dangerous world of Tudor England, where faith and loyalty shift like quicksilver, and those who craft royal garments walk a silent tightrope between splendor and peril. You waken to the quiet rustle of fabric as the first rays of dawn filter through the small window of your chamber at Hampton Court. The palace is still sleeping around you, but your day as one of Queen Catherine Parr's personal tailors begins with the light. The year is 1544, and every stitch you place carries the weight of both royal expectation and religious scrutiny in Henry VIII's England. Pushing aside your woolen blanket, you wince slightly as your feet touch the cold floor. October mornings along the Thames bring a damp chill that seeps through stone walls and wooden floors alike. You dress quickly, your fingers automatically straightening the seams of your own garments, a professional habit impossible to break. Though your position allows for better quality clothing than most subjects enjoy, you keep your appearance deliberately modest. In these uncertain times, appearing too fine might draw unwanted attention, while apparent shabbiness would reflect poorly on your royal employer. Your small chamber is sparsely furnished, but comfortable by the standards of serving craftspeople. A straw mattress covered with linen sheets and wool blankets, a wooden chest containing your personal belongings, a small table with washing basin, and most importantly, excellent light during daylight hours. This last feature is no accident. The Queen herself assigned these quarters specifically for your work when not in the main tailoring chambers. Before leaving, you reach into your chest and retrieve a small object wrapped in soft leather, a gilded thimble passed down from your grandmother, who served in Queen Catherine of Aragon's household years ago. This treasured tool bears tiny decorative crosses around its circumference that appear merely ornamental to casual observers. You slip it into a hidden pocket sewn into your sleeve, not your working thimble for public use, but one reserved for special private commissions. The corridors of Hampton Court at this hour are populated primarily by servants beginning their daily routines. Fireplaces being lit, floors swept, water carried. You nod to familiar faces as you make your way toward the Queen's tailoring chambers, a series of connected rooms near her private apartments where her garments are created and maintained. Unlike the King's massive wardrobe operation with its dozens of specialists, the Queen's tailoring staff is smaller and more intimate, reflecting both economy and her personal preference for closer relationships with her household staff. The familiar scent of beeswax candles, pressing irons warming by the fire, and the distinct smell of fine fabrics greets you as you enter the main workroom. Mistress Eleanor, the Queen's wardrobe mistress and your immediate superior, is already present, sorting through a chest of newly arrived silks from Italy. "Good morning," she acknowledges without looking up. The crimson silk requires immediate attention. Her Majesty wishes to wear it for the Spanish ambassador's reception next week. At 53, Eleanor has survived service to 3 of Henry's queens before Catherine Parr, a remarkable feat of both professional skill and political discretion. You approach the table where the silk in question has been carefully laid out. The material itself is breathtaking. Deep crimson with subtle patterns woven into the very fabric, giving it dimension and character as it catches the light. Such luxury represents more than beauty. It symbolizes royal power through its expense and rarity. Every garment created for Queen Catherine serves not just as clothing, but as a political statement, projecting appropriate messages of English wealth, international connections, and proper queenly dignity. Her Majesty approved the final design last evening, Eleanor continues, handing you a parchment with detailed sketches. Note the changes to the sleeve treatment. The French style has been abandoned in favour of a more modest English approach. This revision speaks volumes about current court politics, with tensions between England and France growing. Adopting French fashion might send unwelcome signals to the visiting Spanish ambassador. Clothing at court never represents mere personal preference. Every choice carries diplomatic weight. Other tailors and seamstresses arrive. The chamber fills with purposeful activity. Your specific role focuses on the most intricate decorative elements, the embroidery and bead application that transforms even the finest fabrics into truly royal garments. Your reputation for creating patterns of extraordinary beauty while maintaining structural integrity has earned you this specialized position where your needle performs what amounts to miniature artistry on cloth. Morning progresses with meticulous work. You prepare pattern threads, matching silk floss to complementary shades that will enhance rather than compete with the base fabric. Each color choice receives careful consideration, not just for aesthetic appeal, but for symbolic meaning. Certain hues carry specific associations at court. Deep reds suggest power and authority. Blues reference loyalty. Golds and yellows, particularly expensive to produce, demonstrate wealth. Purples, traditionally reserved for royalty, must be used with particular care in a monarch's presence. Mid-morning brings unexpected news as Eleanor returns from attending the Queen's dressing. Her Majesty will visit the workroom this afternoon, she announces, causing an immediate flurry of activity as everyone prepares for royal inspection. She wishes to see the progress on the new commission and discuss her requirements for the Christmas court celebrations. Though Catherine Parr visits the tailoring chambers more frequently than her predecessors did, such appearances always generate both excitement and anxiety. The sixth wife of Henry VIII has proven herself politically adept, navigating treacherous court factions while maintaining the king's favour. No small accomplishment given the fates of her predecessors. Her interest in the tailoring process reflects both personal engagement and political awareness, understanding that her visual presentation reinforces her precarious position. As you continue your work, preparing an embroidery frame with the sleeve piece that will require your most detailed attention, your mind considers the complex woman you serve. Queen Catherine's reputation for intelligence and religious reform sympathies is well known, though carefully moderated in public. Her private book collection, which you've glimpsed while delivering completed garments, includes texts that skirt dangerously close to Protestant thinking, despite England's official Catholic orthodoxy. These observations you keep strictly to yourself. Survival at court requires selective blindness to certain matters. Midday brings a brief meal break. Simple bread, cheese, and small beer provided for the Queen's household staff. You eat quickly, using the time to rest your eyes rather than engage in the workshop gossip floating around you. Information is currency at court, but participating too actively in its exchange can prove dangerous. Afternoon light streaming through, the mullioned windows positioned specifically to illuminate the work areas, provides optimal conditions for your detailed stitching. You begin the complex embroidery pattern for the Queen's sleeve, an intricate design featuring Tudor roses interwoven with subtle geometric elements. The pattern appears conventionally appropriate while incorporating symbolism meaningful to those with eyes to see it. Your concentration breaks at the sound of multiple footsteps and hushed voices in the corridor outside. Moments later, Queen Catherine enters the chamber, accompanied by two ladies in waiting. Everyone immediately rises and bows or curtsies deeply. "Please, continue your important work," the Queen says with a gentle smile. At 32, Catherine Parr possesses more mature beauty than the youthful looks that attracted Henry to earlier wives. Her calm intelligence shines through hazel eyes that miss little, while her demeanor projects approachable dignity. Today she wears a relatively simple gown of deep blue velvet with minimal ornamentation, practical for moving through the palace while still maintaining appropriate queenly appearance. Mistress Eleanor guides the Queen through the workroom, describing progress on various commissions. Catherine listens attentively, occasionally asking perceptive questions about materials or construction techniques. Her knowledge of fabrics and fashions exceeds that of most noble ladies, another reflection of her scholarly inclinations. When they reach your workstation, you rise again respectfully. The Queen examines the crimson silk and the embroidery you've begun with careful attention. "Beautiful work as always," she comments, her finger hovering just above but not touching the delicate stitches. Her gaze meets yours briefly with an almost imperceptible nod, a private acknowledgement that carries meaning beyond the simple compliment. The pattern is particularly pleasing. Your geometric elements complement the traditional roses rather than overwhelming them. "Thank you, Your Majesty," you respond, keeping your eyes appropriately lowered. "I've attempted to balance traditional elements with certain innovative approaches that I thought might please you." "Innovation within tradition," she muses, and something in her tone suggests she recognizes the double meaning in your words. A difficult balance to achieve, yet so necessary in all things. The Queen continues her tour, spending nearly an hour in the chambers discussing requirements for upcoming events and examining fabric samples for future commissions. Throughout, you observe her careful behavior, how she demonstrates interest, without appearing frivolous, shows knowledge without seeming prideful, maintains queenly dignity while establishing personal connections with her staff. Her survival in Henry's court has depended on precisely this ability to balance contradictory expectations. After the royal departure, work resumes with renewed energy. The Queen's approval always boosts morale, and her specific praise of your embroidery strengthens your position within the workshop hierarchy. Eleanor assigns additional responsibility for the Christmas court garments based on this royal endorsement, both honor and burden, as these ceremonial garments will be scrutinized by every courtier seeking advantage through criticism. As afternoon fades toward evening, one of the Queen's personal attendants, Lady Elizabeth Tyrwhitt, returns to the workroom. She speaks briefly with Mistress Eleanor before approaching your workstation. "Her Majesty requests your presence in her private study after the evening meal," she says quietly. "Come alone and bring your personal working materials." The instruction to bring your own tools signals this is not a standard fitting or consultation, but something more private. You acknowledge the summons with appropriate deference, betraying none of the curiosity and slight apprehension it generates. Evening meal passes slowly, your mind preoccupied with the upcoming private audience. Such direct service to the Queen outside normal workshop operations is unusual, though not unprecedented. Previous queens sometimes requested personal attention to special garments or repairs, yet Catherine Parr's scholarly reputation suggests this might involve something beyond routine tailoring. When the designated hour arrives, you gather your personal sewing kit, including the hidden gilded thimble, and make your way toward the Queen's private apartments. A guard at the outer door recognizes you as authorized staff and permits entry after a cursory inspection of your sewing basket. Lady Tyrwhitt meets you in the antechamber and conducts you to a small study adjoining the Queen's bedroom. The room reflects its occupants' intellectual interests: shelves of bound books, still rarities despite the printing press, writing materials on a sturdy desk, several astronomical instruments near the window, and comfortable seating arranged for conversation rather than formal audience. The Queen herself sits near the fireplace, more relaxed than in her public appearances, yet still maintaining royal bearing. "Thank you for coming," she says, dismissing Lady Tyrwhitt with a nod. When the door closes, leaving you alone with the Queen, a notable mark of trust, her expression becomes more direct. "I have a special commission requiring your particular skills and discretion." She indicates a small chest on a side table. "Please, examine these." Inside the chest, you find several pieces of fine linen, handkerchiefs and small cloths, suitable for personal use or as modest gifts. Nothing about them appears unusual or worthy of particular secrecy. "These seem ordinary items, Your Majesty," you venture carefully. "Precisely their value," she responds with a slight smile. "I wish them to remain apparently ordinary, while incorporating certain elements meaningful to recipients who share particular spiritual understandings." Understanding dawns slowly. Despite King Henry's break with Rome, his religious policies remain fundamentally conservative, rejecting papal authority while maintaining most Catholic practices. Those favoring more substantial reforms must tread carefully, especially after recent crackdowns on perceived heresy. The Queen's own religious writings walk a precarious line between acceptable devotional literature and more radical Protestant thinking. "I've been told your grandmother served Queen Catherine of Aragon," she continues, watching your reaction closely, "and that certain skills and understandings have been preserved in your family." You consider your response carefully. The Queen appears to be referencing the tradition your grandmother passed down, techniques for embedding religious symbols and abbreviated prayer texts into seemingly innocuous embroidery patterns. These methods developed during times of religious persecution throughout Europe, allowing believers to maintain private devotional practices while presenting public conformity. "My grandmother taught me many traditional techniques, Your Majesty," you acknowledge cautiously, "including ways of creating beauty that reveals itself fully only to those who know what to seek." Catherine nods, satisfied with this diplomatically ambiguous confirmation. "The items in this chest are intended as Christmas gifts for certain ladies whose spiritual companionship has provided me great comfort. In these uncertain times, personal expressions of faith must sometimes find discreet forms." She draws a small piece of parchment from her sleeve, unfolding it to reveal several short phrases in Latin and English. Biblical quotations and prayer fragments reflecting Reformed theological perspectives. These sentiments, or their essence, incorporated into patterns that appear conventional to casual inspection. The commission represents significant risk for both Queen and craftsperson. If these embroidered messages were recognized and interpreted as expressing Reformed religious views, the consequences could be severe, particularly given recent factional efforts to undermine Catherine's influence over the king. "Your reputation for discretion equals that for skill," the Queen adds, acknowledging the unspoken danger. "These must be worked on privately, seen by no other eyes until completed." You bow acceptance of both commission and implied trust. I understand fully, Your Majesty. Perhaps simple geometric borders with subtle floral elements would provide suitable framework for the incorporated messages. Over the next hour, you discuss specific designs that will fulfill the Queen's requirements, patterns that appear decorative to uninitiated observers while containing coded references recognizable to intended recipients. You sketch possibilities, describing how certain stitch combinations can create effects visible only at particular angles or in specific lights. This one, you explain, indicating a deceptively simple interlace pattern, contains spaces where small crosses form at the intersections, visible when sought, but merging into the overall design when viewed casually. Catherine studies your centaur's sketches with evident appreciation for both their artistic merit and hidden functionality. Her scholarly mind quickly grasps the principles behind the encoding techniques, how spacing between elements can represent letters, how thread direction can indicate emphasis, how seemingly decorative knots can form meaningful patterns for those who understand their significance. Remarkable, she murmurs, how something so openly displayed can simultaneously remain so private. Or, communication works thus, Your Majesty, you observe. Then wonder if you've spoken too philosophically to a royal personage. But Catherine nods thoughtfully. Indeed, much like the verbal courtesies we exchange daily at court. Appearing to say one thing while conveying something quite different to those who understand the true language being spoken. A shadow crosses her expression. A necessary skill in these times. As your discussion concludes, practical arrangements are established. You'll work on these special commissions in your private chamber during evening hours. The materials will be transported in your regular sewing basket. The completed items, returned directly to Lady Tyrwhitt rather than through normal workshop channels. The official record will show you're creating simple personal items for the Queen's household gift-giving. Technically true, though significantly incomplete. Before you leave, Catherine asks an unexpected question. Do you fear for your soul in assisting me with this? The directness startles you. Religious matters are dangerous conversational territory even in private, yet the Queen's genuine concern deserves honest response. I believe true devotion must sometimes find quiet expression when public declarations become dangerous. You answer carefully. My grandmother taught that God sees the heart's intention beyond outward forms. Catherine's expression softens. A wise woman, your grandmother. I would have valued her conversation. She extends her hand, an unusual gesture toward a craftsperson that signifies particular trust. We live in an age where wisdom often requires silence, unfortunately. You bow over her hand respectfully before gathering your materials and departing. The interaction leaves you with complicated feelings, pride in the Queen's trust, concern about the risks involved, and deeper reflections about faith and expression in these complicated times. Back in your chamber, door secured and single candle lit, you examine the Queen's materials more thoroughly. The linens are of exceptional quality, fine woven yet sturdy enough to support detailed embroidery without showing stress. You select the first piece for morning work, planning the design carefully to incorporate one of Catherine's chosen scriptural references within a pattern of intertwining vines and small flowers. From your sleeve pocket, you withdraw the gilded thimble. In the candlelight, its tiny cross markings seem to glow with particular significance. This thimble has protected fingers working on similar devotional pieces through 3 generations of political and religious turmoil. From your grandmother's service to Catherine of Aragon, through your mother's work during the religious upheavals following Henry's break with Rome, to your own navigation of the current uncertain times. The following weeks establish a new rhythm to your days. Mornings and afternoons are devoted to official workshop projects. The Queen's crimson reception gown, preparations for Christmas court garments, routine maintenance of existing royal wardrobes. Evenings are spent in private work on Catherine's special commission, each handkerchief receiving hours of careful attention as you incorporate meaningful phrases into beautiful but seemingly conventional designs. The dual nature of your work creates a strange parallel to life at Tudor court itself. The constant balance between public performance and private truth, between displayed allegiance and personal conviction. You observe this same duality throughout Hampton Court as religious and political factions maneuver for advantage while maintaining outward harmony. Court rhythms intensify as Christmas approaches. Royal wardrobes require extensive preparation for the 12 days of celebration that will feature elaborate entertainments, diplomatic receptions, and religious observances. Workshop hours extend into evenings, leaving you less time for the Queen's private commission. Progress slows but remains steady, each piece receiving the careful attention required to balance beauty, functionality, and hidden meaning. Early December brings concerning rumours. Whispers that conservative factions led by Bishop Stephen Gardiner are gathering evidence against those with reformed sympathies. Several court ladies known to share the Queen's intellectual interests receive increased scrutiny. Though Catherine herself remains protected by the King's favour, the atmosphere grows tenser, emphasising the importance of discretion in completing her commissioned pieces. Your work on these special items adapts to changing circumstances. When workshop responsibilities keep you late, you rise before dawn to complete portions by early morning light. The techniques become increasingly refined. Stitches that form tiny crosses at thread intersections, spacing between elements that suggests letters from biblical passages, patterns whose true significance emerges only when the fabric is folded in specific ways. One evening in mid-December, Lady Tyrwhitt arrives at your chamber with unexpected urgency. Her Majesty requests the completed pieces immediately, she whispers. Those still unfinished should be returned as they are. Something in her manner suggests this isn't simply a matter of Christmas timing, but a response to some new development at court. You quickly gather the handkerchiefs, 3 completed, 2 partially finished, wrapping them carefully in plain linen before handing them over. Is Her Majesty well? You venture, concern overcoming protocol. Lady Tyrwhitt's expression remains carefully neutral. The Queen is in good health and spirits, she responds with emphasis that suggests the opposite. She simply wishes to review progress before the holiday festivities begin. The following morning brings clarification as whispered news spreads through Hampton Court. Chancellor Wriothesley, aligned with conservative factions, had apparently obtained a warrant to investigate the Queen's chambers for heretical materials. Only King Henry's personal intervention, allegedly tipped off by someone loyal to Catherine, prevented the search. Though the immediate crisis has passed, the incident demonstrates how precarious religious expression remains, even for the most protected woman in England. This close call casts your specialized work in starker light. No longer simply private, devotional expression but potentially treasonous activity should the political winds shift. Yet the danger seems to strengthen rather than diminish your commitment to the craft and its hidden dimensions. Each stitch placed with your grandmother's thimble connects you to generations who maintained faith through dangerous times, finding ways to preserve essential beliefs within seemingly innocent objects. Christmas court begins with spectacular pageantry, elaborate displays of wealth and power, designed to impress foreign ambassadors and domestic nobility alike. The Queen appears in the crimson silk gown you helped create, its subtle embroidery catching light as she moves through formal ceremonies beside the increasingly frail King Henry. Despite her precarious position, Catherine manages the perfect balance of queenly dignity, wifely submission, and intellectual presence that has maintained her security thus far. During these celebrations, you notice something remarkable. Several ladies in the Queen's inner circle wearing or carrying the handkerchiefs you embroidered. They appear as simple, elegant accessories, the encoded messages invisible to anyone lacking specific knowledge. Yet occasionally, you observe meaningful glances exchanged when these items are displayed. Subtle acknowledgement between women who recognize the true significance of the patterns. The Christian celebration concludes with Epiphany festivities on January 6th. As court life settles back into normal rhythms, you receive another summons to the Queen's private study. Catherine receives you with genuine warmth, despite the formality of the setting. Your work brought special comfort during the holiday observances, she says once privacy is assured. The recipients were deeply moved by both the beauty and meaning of your creations. I'm honored to have served your majesty in this way, you respond sincerely. The Queen gestures toward a small wooden box on her table, a token of appreciation for your discretion and skill. Inside lies a silver thimble with subtle engravings, decorative elements that incorporate tiny crosses and fish symbols, early Christian imagery familiar to those with reformed leanings. I understand the significance such tools hold in your tradition. The gift represents far more than material value. It acknowledges shared understanding and mutual trust in dangerous times. You accept with appropriate gratitude, recognizing this as both reward and responsibility. The Queen's recognition places you more firmly within a network of individuals maintaining private faith while navigating public requirements. We will likely require your special skills again, Catherine adds as your meeting concludes. These times demand continued discretion in matters of personal devotion. Returning to your regular duties in the tailoring chambers brings a curious sense of disconnection. The visible aspects of your craft, creating beautiful garments that display wealth and status, continue unchanged, while the hidden dimensions have deepened significantly. You view your fellow craftspeople differently now, wondering how many others maintain similar dual purposes in their work, preserving private truths within public creations. January progresses with court life returning to its normal intrigues and tensions. The Queen's visit to the tailoring chambers becomes monthly routine again, her public interest in new fabrics and designs providing cover for occasional private communications about special commissions. These become smaller but more frequent, simpler items with more subtle encoded elements, distributed more widely among those sharing reformed sympathies. Your reputation within this hidden network grows alongside your official standing in the royal tailoring establishment. Lady Tyrwhitt sometimes refers individuals from beyond the Queen's immediate circle, courtiers who require similar services for their own private devotional items. Each commission receives careful evaluation before acceptance, as the increasing scope creates additional risk alongside opportunity for meaningful work. Late winter brings concerning developments as King Henry's health deteriorates further. Court factions maneuver more openly for position, anticipating the reign of young Prince Edward under regency control. The Queen maintains perfect public composure, while privately increasing preparations for an uncertain future, including commissioning devotional garments with more extensively encoded content, presumably for use during potentially difficult transitions ahead. Your own position evolves as these broader developments unfold. The skills that make you valuable, both conventional tailoring expertise and specialized encoding techniques, become increasingly recognized within certain circles. Offers arrive from noble households seeking your services should court arrangements change following the king's eventual demise. These potential escape routes provide some security while confirming the growing network of those maintaining reformed faith behind conventional appearances. Spring arrives with renewed political tension as the king's illness progresses. Rumours circulate about who will control young Edward's regency, with religious implications underlying every political calculation. Throughout these uncertain times, your needlework continues serving dual purposes, creating beautiful objects for daily use while preserving and transmitting beliefs that cannot yet be openly expressed. One particularly significant commission arrives in early April, a prayer book cover for the Queen herself, designed to replace her current one that has reportedly drawn unwanted scrutiny from conservative factions. The new cover must appear conventionally devout while incorporating reformed perspectives in its decorative elements, perhaps her most dangerous request, yet given increased surveillance of her religious materials. You accept this commission with full awareness of its implications, working on it exclusively during night hours in your private chamber. The design incorporates traditional religious imagery that satisfies orthodox expectations, while subtle elements, spacing between motifs, directional stitching, proportional relationships, encode reformed theological concepts for those who understand the visual language. As you complete this most significant piece, using both your grandmother's gilded thimble and the Queen's silver gift to create different elements of the design, you reflect on how your craft has transformed during your service at Hampton Court. What began as simply creating beautiful clothing has evolved into preserving essential truths during dangerous times, using needle and thread to maintain connections between like-minded believers when open expression proves impossible. The completed prayer book cover represents your finest work, technically excellent, visually beautiful, and conceptually complex. Its surface appears appropriately devout for a queen's devotional material, while its deeper messages speak quietly to those with eyes trained to see. When you deliver it personally to Catherine through Lady Tyrwhitt's arrangement, the Queen's expression of gratitude carries weight beyond conventional appreciation. "This will serve well in coming days," she says quietly, examining the intricate stitching. Whatever changes arrive, certain truths remain constant beneath shifting appearances. Her words prove prescient as summer approaches with increasing instability in court politics. The king's health worsens, his temper becoming more unpredictable while factions openly position themselves for the coming transition. Catherine maintains her delicate balance, showing perfect loyalty to Henry, while quietly preparing for an uncertain future where her reformed sympathies might face greater challenges or find new freedom. Throughout these turbulent final months of Henry's reign, your work continues in both dimensions, creating visible beauty that meets current expectations while preserving hidden continuity with beliefs that may soon face new tests. Each piece that passes through your hands, whether grand court garment or simple personal item, represents this essential duality: appearance and reality, public conformity and private truth. As autumn approaches, with the king's health failing more rapidly, you receive increasing inquiries about your availability for service in other noble households. The Queen herself, through Lady Tyrwhitt, suggests you consider options beyond court service should circumstances change unfavorably after Henry's death. These conversations occur in careful euphemisms, yet their meaning remains clear. The network that has sustained private faith may need to reconfigure itself under new political realities. Your response to these possibilities remains measured. While establishing potential connections with sympathetic households, you continue serving the current court with undiminished commitment. The skills developed here, both technical expertise and the ability to communicate through seemingly innocent, decorative elements, will remain valuable wherever religious and political winds may blow. Looking back over your years at Hampton Court, you recognize how the dual nature of your craft mirrors larger truths about Tudor England itself, a society where appearances often diverge dramatically from reality, where survival requires maintaining multiple identities simultaneously, where truth sometimes must hide within beauty to endure troubled times. The gilded and silver thimbles in your possession, one inherited through family tradition, one granted through royal recognition, symbolize this continuity of purpose across generations. Through changing regimes, theological shifts, and political upheavals, skilled hands have continued creating objects that preserve essential beliefs when open expression proves dangerous. As winter approaches with Henry's life clearly drawing toward its close, you continue your daily work in the tailoring chambers while maintaining your evening practice of creating ink-coded devotional items. Whatever comes with the new reign, whether greater freedom for reformed faith under young Edward or renewed persecution, the techniques developed through generations of your family tradition will adapt and continue. The true legacy of your time at Tudor Court exists not in the magnificent ceremonial garments that will eventually decay despite careful preservation, but in the quiet language of thread and fabric that has allowed true devotion to continue unbroken through dangerous times. Like the patterns you create, visible to all yet truly understood by few, essential faith persists beneath changing appearances, awaiting the day when private truth might safely become public expression. This moment fades softly now. Let's continue on deeper into the past. Close your eyes and feel time flowing backward through the rivers of history, to an empire balanced between East and West, where silk whispers secrets of power and faith. The air grows heavy with incense and intrigue as you enter the twilight days of Byzantium, where a tailor's hands create magnificent garments for an emperor whose world is slowly crumbling. The morning sun filters through the latticed window of your workshop, casting geometric patterns across lengths of precious silk spread upon your cutting table. You pause in your work, needle poised mid-air, to listen to the distant sounds drifting from the harbour. More ships arriving, perhaps bringing more refugees from outlying provinces. The year is 1452, and though few speak it aloud within the great walls of Constantinople, the Byzantine Empire is dying. Sultan Mehmed II's Ottoman forces gather beyond the horizon, and the once vast dominion of Eastern Rome has contracted to little more than the capital city itself. You are Nikolaos Argyros, master tailor to the imperial court of Constantine the Thekins, Palaiologos, last emperor of the Romans. For 23 years, your hands have created garments for the highest ranks of Byzantine nobility, transforming silk, gold thread, and precious stones into visual expressions of an empire's fading glory. The weight of tradition rests in every stitch you place. Your craft is not merely clothing, but the preservation of imperial symbolism stretching back more than 1,000 years. Returning to your work, you examine the deep purple silk with critical expertise. True imperial purple, the sacred color reserved exclusively for the emperor's ceremonial garments, has become increasingly difficult to obtain. The murex shellfish required for its production are harvested from waters now largely controlled by Venice or the Ottomans, making each batch of the dye more precious than gold. This particular length, destined to become a chlamys, ceremonial cloak, for Emperor Constantine's Easter appearance, represents months of effort by dyers working with increasingly limited resources. The silk itself tells a similar story of diminished circumstances. Once produced exclusively in imperial workshops within Constantinople, controlling a global monopoly that brought immense wealth to Byzantium, silk production has now spread throughout the Mediterranean world. The empire that once jealously guarded sericulture as a state secret now struggles to maintain even modest production. This particular bolt, still magnificent by any standard, was woven in a small imperial workshop from threads produced by the last remaining imperial silk farms in Thrace. Your workshop occupies a privileged position within the Great Palace complex, the sprawling ancient heart of imperial administration along Constantinople's eastern shoreline. Though the emperors now primarily reside in the Blachane Palace in the city's northwest, the Great Palace remains the ceremonial center of Byzantine authority. Your location here, rather than in the city's commercial districts, reflects both the critical importance of imperial regalia and the intensely controlled nature of court dress. The space around you bears witness to decades of prestigious service. Wooden cabinets contain pattern pieces developed over generations of imperial tailors, templates for garments whose precise proportions and decorative elements are prescribed by rigid protocol. Shelves hold precious materials: gold thread from Venice, pearls from the Black Sea, silk ribbons in regulated colors denoting specific ranks and offices. Your tools: silver scissors, ivory measuring rods, needles of the finest steel, represent the pinnacle of craftsmanship, many inherited from your father and grandfather who served previous emperors. Most valuable, however, is the knowledge preserved in your mind and hands, techniques passed down through an unbroken lineage of imperial tailors since Justinian's era. You are not merely a craftsman, but a keeper of tradition, ensuring that each garment precisely follows the symbolic language of Byzantine court dress. Every element, color, proportion, decorative motifs, placement of jewels, communicates specific messages about hierarchy, authority, and divine favor within the elaborate theater of imperial appearances. A knock at the workshop door interrupts your concentration. Your apprentice, Alexios, admits a palace messenger bearing sealed instructions. You recognize the imperial chancellery seal and accept the document with appropriate reverence. Breaking the wax seal, you scan the formal Greek script with practiced ease. Additional orders for court garments required for upcoming diplomatic receptions, particularly for the Western envoys expected to arrive soon. The document's subtext is clear to anyone familiar with court politics. Emperor Constantine continues seeking military assistance from Western Christendom against the Ottoman threat, despite the lingering bitterness following the Fourth Crusade's sack of Constantinople in 1204 and the controversial attempt at reunification with the Catholic Church at the Council of Florence in 1439. These diplomatic efforts remain deeply unpopular with many Byzantine citizens who prefer Ottoman turbans to Catholic tiaras, as the saying goes. The messenger awaits your formal acknowledgement. Inform the protovestiarios that I understand His Imperial Majesty's requirements, you respond, referencing the court official responsible for imperial wardrobe. The garments will be ready for fitting in 5 days' time. After the messenger departs, you summon Alexios to examine the new commission. The emperor requires court garments that will impress the Western ambassadors while maintaining appropriate imperial dignity, you explain. We must balance traditional Byzantine elements with subtle acknowledgements of Western tastes. This delicate negotiation between tradition and diplomacy exemplifies your role as more than mere craftsman. Each garment must simultaneously preserve centuries of imperial symbolism while adapting to current political necessities. Too traditional, and Western visitors might perceive an unwillingness to engage with their world. Too accommodating to Western aesthetics, and Byzantine courtiers would see weakness and cultural capitulation. Begin preparing the blue silk, you instruct Alexios. Not the imperial purple, that remains exclusively for sacred ceremonies, but the deep blue reserved for diplomatic functions. We'll incorporate gold eagles and crosses using the raised embroidery technique. While Alexios sorts through material stores, you return to the purple ceremonial chlamys. Your fingers work with practiced precision, creating tiny, even stitches that will join sections of the garment. The act is simultaneously practical and meditative. Each stitch a prayer for the empire's survival. Each completed seam a small defiance against the encroaching end. Midday approaches, marked by changing light through the windows and distant church bells. Palace servants deliver a simple meal: bread, olives, cheese, watered wine, which you and Alexios eat quickly before returning to work. Time has become precious. Though no one speaks it directly, everyone within the palace walls works with the knowledge that each ceremony, each diplomatic function, each expression of imperial continuity might be among the last. Afternoon brings an unexpected visitor, Manuel Discipatos, imperial chamberlain and longtime liaison between your workshop and the emperor's personal household. His arrival without prior arrangement suggests unofficial business. Master Argyros, he greets you, formally before turning to your apprentice. Young Alexios, perhaps you might fetch fresh water for us. The day grows warm. Once alone, Manuel's formal demeanor softens slightly. You've known each other for decades, your careers in imperial service following parallel paths. The situation worsens, he says quietly, voice barely above a whisper, despite the privacy. Our agents report the Sultan has commissioned the casting of great cannons specifically to breach our walls. You nod grimly, having already heard similar rumors from silk merchants with connections in Ottoman territories. And the Western assistance? Manuel's expression conveys volumes. Promises without substance thus far. Venice and Genoa protect their trading privileges with the Ottomans. The Pope links any meaningful help to church reunification, which the people would never accept. And the Emperor? Constantine remains resolute. He will defend the city to the last stone. Manuel pauses, glancing toward the door before continuing even more quietly. This is not my official purpose today, but as old friends. Arrangements are being made for certain imperial treasures to be secured or evacuated. Historical documents, sacred relics, items of particular significance. The unspoken question hangs between you. What will become of the imperial garments, the physical embodiments of Byzantine authority that you've devoted your life to creating? Some are ceremonial objects beyond monetary value, incorporating elements from garments worn by emperors centuries ago, encrusted with jewels representing imperial victories, embedded with relics of saints who protected the empire through previous existential threats. I have certain preparations in mind, you respond carefully. Items that preserve essential knowledge. Manuel nods, understanding your meaning, without requiring details that might later prove dangerous if demanded under duress. The Emperor has specified that court ceremonies shall continue without alteration or diminishment, regardless of external circumstances, he says, returning to his official capacity. The Easter celebrations, in particular, must reflect the full dignity of imperial tradition. This instruction, maintaining elaborate ceremony even as catastrophe looms, might seem delusional to outsiders, but makes perfect sense within Byzantine understanding. The empire has survived previous existential threats through unwavering commitment to its divine purpose, and imperial continuity. The ceremonial garments you create aren't mere clothing, but physical manifestations of an unbroken imperial lineage stretching back to Constantine the Great. After Manuel departs, Alexios returns, clearly curious about the conversation, but too well-trained to ask directly. You provide limited information while redirecting his attention to the diplomatic garments under construction. The boy, nearly a man at 17, has shown exceptional promise during his 5 years under your instruction. In normal times, he would eventually succeed you as master of the Imperial Tailoring Workshop, continuing traditions maintained since Justinian codified court dress 9 centuries earlier. But these are not normal times. The afternoon proceeds with focused industry. You supervise Alexios's work on the diplomatic garments while continuing the more sacred task of the Easter chlamys yourself. As the most important ceremonial garment in the imperial wardrobe, this purple silk cloak embroidered with gold eagles and studded with pearls represents Byzantine imperial authority in its purest form. Its creation is not merely craftsmanship, but an act of faith, faith in the empire's divine protection and historical continuity. As daylight begins to fade, you light oil lamps to continue working. The palace has imposed no restrictions on lamp oil, despite increasing shortages in the city. Another sign of the emperor's determination to maintain normal ceremonial operations, regardless of external pressures. The warm light softens the workshop's angles, casting gentle shadows across generations of accumulated tools and materials. You dismiss Alexios for the evening but remain yourself, using these solitary hours for special work beyond the official commissions. From a locked cabinet, accessible only to yourself, you remove a leather portfolio containing sketches and notes accumulated throughout your career. Detailed records of garment construction techniques, symbolic elements, and color formulations that represent the accumulated knowledge of Byzantine imperial tailoring. This documentation violates traditional practice. For centuries, imperial tailoring knowledge has been transmitted directly from master to apprentice, never recorded in written form, partly to protect trade secrets, partly because the spiritual significance of certain elements was considered too sacred for casual documentation. But these are not traditional times. Working by lamplight, you continue adding to these records. Detailed drawings showing how the sacred garments are constructed, precise formulations for achieving particular color effects, explanations of the symbolic significance behind decorative elements. Your hand moves methodically across the parchment, preserving knowledge that has existed primarily in the minds and hands of imperial tailors for nearly a millennium. This act represents your personal response to the empire's precarious position. Should Constantinople fall, a possibility you can now acknowledge at least in private thought, these records might preserve something of Byzantine imperial tradition for future generations. Whether they would be valued as historical curiosities or revived as living traditions remains in God's hands. But your responsibility is clear: to preserve what might otherwise be lost forever. Near midnight, you secure the documentation in its hiding place and retire to your small chamber adjacent to the workshop. Sleep comes uneasily, filled with dreams of past imperial ceremonies, coronations, marriages, triumphal processions, garments you created floating through sacred spaces now threatened by approaching armies. Morning arrives with the familiar rhythm of palace life. Servants moving through corridors, church bells marking the hours, the distant sounds of the city awakening. You begin the day with prayer before returning to the workshop, where Alexios arrives promptly to continue yesterday's work. The gold thread shipment arrived from Venice, he informs you, presenting a small but valuable package. Less than requested, But the merchant claims the price has doubled since our order was placed. This news represents another small indication of deteriorating circumstances. Suppliers beginning to demand premium payments from a government whose future appears increasingly uncertain. You examine the gold thread critically. Despite the reduced quantity, the quality remains excellent. Venetian merchants maintain standards even while adjusting business practices to political realities. We'll use it sparingly on the diplomatic garments. You decide. Reserve the finest portions for the emperor's Easter regalia. The morning advances with steady progress on both projects. Alexios demonstrates impressive skill with the diplomatic garments, his stitching nearly matching your own in regularity and tension. His development reassures you that the technical aspects of imperial tailoring, at least, might survive current threats through his trained hands. Midday brings another imperial messenger, this time summoning you to the Blachernay palace for direct consultation with the protovestiarios regarding upcoming ceremonial requirements. Such meetings normally occur weekly, but recent military preparations have disrupted regular schedules. You clean your hands, change into appropriate court attire kept specifically for such functions, and follow the messenger through Constantinople's streets. The walk from the Great Palace complex to Blachernay offers a sobering view of the capital's current state. Once bustling markets operate with reduced goods. Some neighborhoods appear partially abandoned as wealthier residents have fled to Western territories. Repair work on damaged buildings proceeds slowly due to material shortages. Yet amid these concerning signs, life continues with surprising normalcy. Children play in side streets, priests process between churches conducting regular blessings. Shopkeepers call out to potential customers. Constantinople has endured for over 1,000 years through countless threats. Its citizens maintain daily patterns with the stubborn resilience that has preserved Byzantine civilization through previous darkest hours. Arriving at Blachernay Palace, you're escorted through security checkpoints that have grown notably stricter in recent months. The imperial residence shows signs of increased military presence. Guards more numerous. Open spaces converted to storage for supplies. Certain passageways restricted for defensive preparations. The protovestiarios receives you in his administrative chambers rather than the more formal audience room. Another small indication of adjusted priorities. Georgios Francis, who holds this office, responsible for imperial wardrobe and certain court ceremonies, has served Emperor Constantine since before his coronation. His tired expression and ink-stained fingers suggest administrative burdens, far beyond normal court functions. Master Argyros, he greets you with formal but genuine respect. Thank you for coming. We must discuss modifications to the ceremonial calendar. The conversation that follows reveals significant adjustments to upcoming court functions. Certain ceremonies condensed or combined. Some processional routes altered due to defensive preparations. Attendance lists revised to acknowledge diplomatic priorities. Throughout these changes, however, one principle remains absolute. The visual presentation of imperial authority through ceremonial garments must remain uncompromised. His Imperial Majesty insists that while practical adjustments are necessary, the symbolic elements of court ceremony must maintain complete historical continuity, as Francis explains. The people draw strength from these visible connections to our imperial past. In uncertain times, such continuity becomes even more essential. You understand completely. Throughout Byzantine history, imperial garments have functioned not merely as clothing, but as physical embodiments of divine authority. The emperor appears as Christ's representative on earth, partly through these visual signifiers. the purple silk that references imperial blood, the gold embroidery that reflects divine light, the jeweled decorations whose patterns carry meaning understood by educated observers. Maintaining these elements affirms that despite external threats, the empire's spiritual foundation remains unbroken. Before departing, you receive additional, more confidential instructions. The emperor may need to appear before troops stationed along the walls, as Francis informs you quietly. Prepare appropriate martial garments that balance military functionality with clear imperial symbolism. The soldiers must see both their commander and their emperor when he addresses them. This commission, creating garments for potential battle conditions, carries particular poignancy. Byzantine emperors have always maintained dual identities, as both sacred figures and military leaders, but recent centuries saw fewer emperors personally commanding troops. That Constantine V appears to be preparing for direct military leadership speaks volumes about the approaching crisis. Returning to your workshop through afternoon light, you mentally revise work schedules to accommodate these new requirements. The specialized military garments will require particular attention, maintaining imperial symbolism while allowing practical movement, incorporating protective elements without sacrificing recognizable imperial signifiers. You find Alexios making excellent progress on the diplomatic garments. His growing confidence allows you to delegate increasing responsibility, freeing your own hands for the most ceremonially significant items and the new military commission. You provide brief instruction on adjustments needed for the revised ceremonial schedule before turning to your personal workbench. From a special cabinet, you remove materials reserved for imperial military garments, sturdy silk reinforced for durability, specialized metallic threads that maintain flexibility, decorative elements specifically associated with Byzantine martial tradition. These materials, rarely used in recent decades of diplomatic rather than military emphasis, carry their own historical significance. As afternoon transitions to evening, you work on initial pattern modifications for the emperor's military garments. The basic form follows traditional Byzantine military dress, but you incorporate subtle elements from classical Roman military iconography, visual references to the empire's ancient martial prowess that might inspire both the emperor and his troops during the coming conflict. When Alexios departs for the evening, you again retrieve your secret documentation project. Tonight, you focus on recording the symbolic elements of imperial military garments, the specific meanings of decorative patterns, the historical significance of certain color combinations, the proper placement of insignia according to ancient precedent. These details, preserved through centuries of imperial tradition, represent knowledge that exists nowhere else in such complete form. The following days establish an intensified work rhythm. Mornings and afternoons focus on official commissions, the Easter ceremonial garments, diplomatic attire, and military clothing, while evening hours are dedicated to your private documentation project. Physical fatigue accumulates, but purpose drives you forward. Each completed garment, each preserved technique, represents small defiance against the approaching threat of historical erasure. 1 week before Easter, you receive summons for the emperor's fitting. Such direct interaction with the imperial person occurs rarely. Typically, garments are fitted on body forms created to imperial measurements, with final adjustments made through intermediaries. Direct fitting indicates both the importance of these particular garments and the compressed time frame now facing court functions. The fitting takes place in a private chamber of Blashenet Palace. You arrive well before the appointed hour, ceremonial, garments and military attire carefully transported by trusted palace attendants. Everything must be prepared perfectly. Tools arranged for efficient use. Materials organized for rapid adjustments. your own appearance meeting appropriate standards for imperial presence. Emperor Constantine V enters precisely at the appointed time, accompanied only by his most trusted chamberlains rather than the larger entourage that traditionally attends him. At 48, the last Byzantine emperor carries himself with dignity that masks the enormous pressures confronting him. His expression shows fatigue from endless diplomatic negotiations and military preparations. Yet his bearing remains imperial, the product of lifelong training in embodying authority through physical presence. Protocol dictates your behavior precisely. Specific forms of address, carefully limited physical contact even during necessary measurements. Eyes appropriately lowered, except when professional requirements demand direct observation. These formalities, observed even in private settings, maintain the sacred distance between emperor and subject that Byzantine political theology requires. The Easter chlamys first, Constantine directs after initial greetings. You carefully present the nearly completed ceremonial garment, the purple silk cloak embroidered with golden eagles and crosses, studded with pearls in patterns representing imperial virtues. The emperor examines it with knowledgeable appreciation. Like all Byzantine rulers, he understands the symbolic language of court dress intimately. "Excellent work as always, Master Argyros," he comments, allowing attendants to drape the garment over his shoulders for fitting. The color depth is particularly fine, true imperial purple, not the lesser shades some have accepted in recent decades. This observation reflects more than aesthetic appreciation. True imperial purple, the specific shade reserved exclusively for the emperor, represents sovereignty itself. Maintaining its precise formulation despite resource challenges makes a powerful statement about imperial continuity. You make minor adjustments to the chlamys's drape and fastening, working efficiently while maintaining appropriate deference. The emperor stands perfectly still during this process. Another aspect of imperial discipline, the ability to become a living statuary when ceremonial functions require it. The diplomatic garments receive similar attention, with Constantine offering occasional comments about how certain elements might be perceived by Western ambassadors. His observations reveal sophisticated understanding of how clothing communicates across cultural boundaries, how particular decorative techniques might impress Venetian sensibilities, how certain proportions align with current Italian aesthetic preferences while maintaining Byzantine imperial dignity. Finally, you present the military garments, still in development but sufficiently complete for initial fitting. The emperor's expression changes subtly as he examines these items, his focus sharpening with martial assessment rather than ceremonial appreciation. "The weight is good," he notes, testing the reinforced silk's movement capability. "And the eagles remain clearly visible even at a distance." "Yes, Your Imperial Majesty." The metallic thread technique ensures visibility in various lighting conditions while maintaining the garment's flexibility. Constantine nods approval, testing ranges of motion appropriate for potential combat situations while still wearing the garment with imperial bearing. This duality, practical warrior and divine representative, embodies Byzantine leadership ideals dating back to the empire's formation. As the fitting concludes, the emperor pauses before dismissing you. "Your family has served the imperial wardrobe. For how many generations, Master Argyros?" "7 generations, Your Imperial Majesty, since the time of Emperor Manuel III Komnenos." Constantine nods thoughtfully. 3 centuries of faithful service, maintaining traditions much older still. He pauses, something unspoken passing behind his eyes. History remembers those who preserve civilization's essence through darkest hours. This cryptic statement, acknowledging dangerous possibilities while expressing faith in historical continuity, represents the closest any official conversation has come to directly addressing Constantinople's precarious position. The emperors, our words seem to recognize and validate your private documentation efforts without explicitly mentioning them. We serve as providence allows, your imperial majesty. You respond carefully. Constantine offers a slight but genuine smile, a rare expression. In these burdened times, indeed we do, Master Argyros. Indeed we do. Returning to your workshop, you find renewed purpose in this imperial acknowledgement. The afternoon and evening pass in focused productivity, adjustments to fitted garments, continued development of military attire, and further documentation of techniques and traditions that might otherwise be lost. The following days bring increasing signs of an approaching crisis. Military preparations become more visible throughout the city. Diplomatic messengers arrive with greater frequency. Religious processions increase as spiritual defenses are marshaled alongside physical ones. Throughout these developments, court ceremonies continue with outward normalcy, each imperial appearance carefully choreographed to demonstrate continuity and confidence. Easter arrives with traditional solemnity, despite the threatening circumstances. The emperor processes from Blachernay to Hagia Sophia, wearing the purple chlamys you created, its gold embroidery catching morning light as he moves through streets lined with citizens. The great cathedral, heart of Orthodox Christianity and symbol of Byzantine spiritual authority, fills with officials, diplomats, and citizens witnessing continued imperial tradition despite looming threats. Watching from an appropriate distance, you observe how your work contributes to this powerful visual statement of continuity. The emperor's garments connect present circumstances to Byzantine imperial tradition, stretching back a millennium. The same purple worn by Justinian, the same golden eagles that adorned Constantine the Great, the same pearls that symbolized imperial virtues since Rome's Eastern transformation. Days following Easter bring increasing alarm as reports confirm Ottoman forces approaching Constantinople's vicinity. Military preparations intensify. Some remaining civilians evacuate. Diplomatic efforts reach desperate intensity. Throughout these developments, imperial appearances continue according to traditional protocol, with appropriate garments marking each official function. April advances with growing tension throughout the city. Your workshop receives unusual instructions. Prepare the complete range of imperial ceremonial garments for immediate access. Ensure all significant items are properly maintained and located in secure but accessible storage. These directives, while expressed in practical terms, carry obvious implication. The imperial wardrobe must be ready for rapid decisions as circumstances evolve. Your private documentation project gains urgency. Working late into each night, you complete detailed records of garment construction techniques, symbolic elements, color formulations, and historical contexts. This knowledge, accumulated through centuries of imperial tradition, takes physical form through your careful drawings and explanations. By early April, Ottoman forces begin taking positions outside Constantinople's walls. The emperor increases personal appearances at defensive positions, wearing the military attire you created, practical garments that nonetheless clearly identify him to troops through imperial symbolism. Reports from these appearances note how Constantine's physical presence and visual authority boost defender morale despite overwhelming odds. As the situation deteriorates further, you face painful decisions about your documentation project. Keeping such records within the palace becomes increasingly risky as the possibility of breach grows more concrete. After careful consideration, you arrange for trusted contacts, a Venetian merchant with whom you've worked for decades and who plans to depart on one of the last ships permitted to leave the harbour, to transport sealed portions of your documentation to safety in Italy. This represents knowledge that might otherwise disappear, you explain during a clandestine meeting, handling over carefully wrapped parchments. Not military secrets or state information, simply the accumulated craft wisdom of imperial tailoring traditions. The merchant, Lorenzo Bembo, understands the historical significance beyond any monetary value. I will ensure these reach Venice and remain preserved for when they might serve future generations, he promises. Perhaps someday, when circumstances allow, this knowledge will return to its rightful inheritance. You retain portions of the documentation within the workshop, information too significant to risk losing entirely, yet too sensitive to send abroad without certainty of appropriate guardianship. These materials you conceal within specially constructed compartments of traditional pattern storage cabinets, hidden yet potentially discoverable by someone with appropriate training. Late April brings the formal beginning of the Ottoman siege. The emperor orders full ceremonial court functions maintained despite military operations. A powerful statement that Byzantine imperial tradition continues uninterrupted regardless of external threats. Your workshop operates continuously during this period, maintaining imperial garments while preparing specialized items for emergency requirements. As the siege intensifies through early May, you make final arrangements with Alexios. If circumstances require, you tell him privately, certain knowledge must survive even if individuals cannot. You reveal selected hiding locations for the most essential documentation, instructing him on conditions under which this information should be preserved through escape or concealed for potential future recovery. The young man receives these instructions with appropriate gravity. I understand my responsibility to our traditions, he affirms. Whether through continued practice or preserved knowledge, what we have maintained for centuries will not end with us. By late May, the situation becomes critical. Ottoman cannons have damaged multiple sections of the ancient walls. Supplies within the city dwindle. Defender numbers prove insufficient to fully man the perimeter. Throughout these deteriorating circumstances, imperial ceremonies continue, reduced in scale but maintained in essential elements. Each appearance of the emperor in appropriate ceremonial garments, reinforcing Byzantine continuity despite approaching catastrophe. The night of May 28, 1453, brings summons from Blachany Palace. The emperor requests his most formal imperial regalia, garments normally reserved for coronations and the highest religious ceremonies, to be prepared for immediate use. This unprecedented instruction speaks volumes about Constantine's awareness of historical significance. The final Byzantine emperor will meet whatever comes dressed in the full visual authority of his imperial lineage. Working through the night, you personally prepare these sacred garments, the heavily jeweled lauros, ceremonial stole, representing Christ's burial shroud, the imperial crown with pendants framing the emperor's face like divine radiance, the purple boots that only the emperor may wear. Each item carries centuries of accumulated meaning, connecting Constantine X to every emperor since the foundation of Constantinople over 1,000 years earlier. Dawn approaches with reports of increased Ottoman activities, preparations for what military commanders warn may be the final assault. You complete the imperial regalia preparation as first light appears, arranging for trusted couriers to transport these items to Blachany, where the emperor prepares for what may be his final public appearance. Before releasing these sacred garments, likely the last imperial Byzantine regalia you will ever prepare, you allow yourself a moment of personal connection. Your fingers trace the golden eagles embroidered on purple silk. the pearls arranged in patterns representing imperial virtues, the subtle crosses worked into decorative borders. These elements represent not just your life's work, but an unbroken tradition of imperial visual theology stretching back to Constantine the Great's adoption of Christianity as imperial religion. May they serve their final purpose with appropriate dignity, you whisper, before carefully wrapping the garments for transport. Morning brings confirmation of fears. The final Ottoman assault has begun across multiple sections of the walls. From your workshop in the Great Palace complex, distant sounds of conflict reach even through ancient stone walls. Palace officials provide regular updates as the situation evolves, each report more concerning than the last. Mid-morning, Emperor Constantine V makes his final recorded appearance, dressed in the imperial regalia you prepared. According to witnesses, who survived to report later, he addresses defenders near the breached sections of wall, removes his imperial insignia to avoid its capture, and leads a final charge against advancing Ottoman forces. The last Byzantine emperor, wearing garments that connected him to 1,000 years of imperial tradition, disappears into history during this desperate final defense. As Ottoman forces penetrate deeper into the city, palace officials implement final contingency plans. Certainly sacred. As the sun sets on another day in your workshop, you realize that time flows differently when measured by the rhythm of needle and thread. The centuries-old craft continues through your hands, connecting you to countless nameless artisans who came before. You run your fingertips over the completed doublet, feeling every stitch, every careful fold, every whispered secret embedded in the fabric. The candlelight casts long shadows across your workbench as you carefully put away your tools. The silver, scissors passed down through 3 generations, the bone needle case worn smooth by countless hands, the thimble that feels like an extension of your finger. These simple implements have built kingdoms, clothed royalty, and brought beauty to the common folk alike. Outside, the town settles into its nighttime quiet. The church bells toll the evening hour, and you know that tomorrow will bring new challenges, new fabrics, new designs to puzzle over. But tonight, as you close your workshop door and step into the narrow cobblestone street, you carry with you the quiet satisfaction of work well done. A satisfaction known only to those who create with their hands, who transform the simplest materials into objects of necessity and beauty. In this moment, standing between your workshop and your home, between the day that's past and the one yet to come, you understand that your legacy isn't in gold or land or titles. It's in the garments that will warm bodies long after yours has returned to dust, in the techniques you've passed to apprentices who will teach others in turn, in the quiet dignity of honest labor that has sustained humanity since we first learned to cover our nakedness with something more than animal skins. And in this understanding, there is peace. Thank you for spending this quiet time with us, drifting through forgotten echoes of history. If this story brought you peace, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs rest. We'd love to hear from you in the comments below. Until next time, sleep well, dream softly, and good night.